Welcome
Yeah.
along anyway. Thanks for joining me here today on Martin's World. If you wouldn't mind, just giving a quick introduction to the audience, your name, who you are, and a little bit about yourself.
Hi out there in Martin's World land. I'm John O Regan. I'm living in Kilkee for about 5 years. Lived in Limerick for about 20 years before that on the Dole, and lived in Holland for about 5 years as well. First time over there was working as a proper job, working for Philips in Nijmegen. If you're watching the news lately, Nijmegen is one of the cities where they have this pilot program where they'll be bringing in Dutch grown cannabis. Like, I mean, when I was living there, you could go down, when I arrived in 1985, 21 years of age, go down to the coffee shop, you could buy the darkest Afghani hashed stuff that will have you stoned the next day. I mean, it's just amazing. But I mean, you could, if you wanted lighter, easier stuff, there was like, you could get this pollen hash, it's very light colored, it'll break up, you hardly need to burn it.
Yeah.
And there's all, I mean, I mean, it was great. You go in there, pick out 20 different types of hash. There was no grass at the time because nobody had figured out yet how to grow proper flowers, like, you know, so it was all hashish, like, and you could pick and choose, like, you know, I mean, like, for instance, Afghan, I'd only ever smoke once a blue moon because it's just blowing my head off. Like, I mean, there's no point. You have it on a Friday night and you wake up the next day, Saturday, and you're still stoned, you know,
Stone over.
and yeah. So I mean, which is great. Like, I mean, you could go, if you're anybody who's been to Holland knows that you can, if you want to blow your head off and be stoned out immaculate as what's his name in the, who's to say that, the Jim Morrison, if you can be stoned out of your box, or you can just get a nice little buzz and go and do your shopping and walk around town. I mean, and you come back to, I mean, when I came back to Ireland then in 1990, I went down to Sir Henry's in Cork, and I was told, if you want to get hash, you go down to this place. And I went down to this place, and I met this guy. He was like 14, maybe 16. Well, he was 14 going on 17. You know, I mean, he was a stocky young fella, very young teenager. And so that's my first introduction to buying cannabis in Ireland was this guy up near. He told me if I wanted to meet him in future, go up to Shandon Bells. That's where he'd be. So I went up the second night. I went up to Shandon Bells and got a deal off him. Like, I mean, I'm used to now going down to the coffee shop, chatting with people. You know, I mean, it's like same as having a pint. Like, and I mean, I'm not. This is no exaggeration and no word of a lie. The second night I met him up by Shandon Bells, there was two girls in their school uniforms,
Stop.
standing about 5 yards away, watching what we were talking about, watching what was going on. And after we'd done our deal, he turns around to these two girls in their school uniform, and these weren't like Mandy Moore, whatever it was, 14 going on 24. These were small girls, you know what I mean? They were about 3 feet tall, one of them was like. And he turns around, he's finished with me, looks over them, you looking for a deal, girls? Yeah, he says. I mean, I spent 5 years in Holland. You never see teenagers hanging around a coffee shop looking for somebody to go in to get a deal for them. I mean, if somebody in Holland wanted a bit of cannabis, they'd go to their mother and father or their older brother or sister. I mean, and it totally out in Europe. And if they had a problem with it, they'd go to the doctor and
Yeah.
explain. You know, I mean, it was the most natural I'm not saying there's no problems with cannabis in Holland. There's no such thing as having no problem. There's always going to be a certain percentage of people that
Yeah.
have it has a bad effect on them. And what can you do? I mean,
Definitely.
so like,
But what you're saying, I think there's a lot of truth there. The evidence is in the numbers. When you look at the youth, population of, or the percent of the population of the youth in Holland that use cannabis compared to Ireland, there's much more actually use it here in Ireland than there is in Holland, even to today. And by and large, just because of the perception of it, you know, it's kind of a cool, rebellious thing to break the law and consume these illegal drugs. Whereas in Holland, it's seen as, oh, that's something my uncle does, or my Aunt Mary,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like it's much
yeah.
more normalized, but it doesn't have this allure, this appeal to the young, rebellious teenagers, as it does here in Ireland. And I don't think much has really changed from the 90s till today. I think a lot of the hash and cannabis out there today is sold by younger people. Like, I don't know if you've seen the jellies and
Well,
stuff now at the moment, they're everywhere.
there's hash-like substances being sold. I mean, when I
Hash
came
like.
back to when I came back to Ireland, when I first got this, this dealer guy wrote Shandon Bells. I noticed after a couple of months, my fingernail and my one of the fingers that I'd be using to crumble, the hash, the fingernail was getting worn down, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And eventually I figured it out. All the crap that they put into the hash, you know, like dirt and gravel and stones and other stuff. I mean, there's some people put in actual shit into their,
Yeah.
I mean, and mix it in. Like, I mean, this stuff, you couldn't give it away in Holland. The stuff that they were selling I mean, I eventually just decided no more. Like, I mean, I mean, in cannabis in Holland that I used to buy, the worst that would happen if you smoked too much of it is you'd fall asleep. Whereas the cannabis that you buy in Ireland, the stuff that I was getting, it would make you sick. But actually, you'd feel, oh God Almighty. I mean, it's so like I quit for about 10 years. I just couldn't be bothered with it. Like, I mean, and then I got a place to live, a house to live where I was able to grow it myself. So for the first time in 10 years, I was able to grow it myself. And I was growing it away then for years in no problem, never arrested, no trouble with the law. 20 years in Limerick, like, and no problems with the law at all. And well, one slight problem. I used to put up these posters around Limerick, you know, telling jokes, like, you know, like stupid jokes, like, and trying to get people interested in legalizing cannabis and legalizing drugs if they were interested in that sort of thing.
Do you have an example
But
of any of those jokes?
Well, I thought, well, they weren't terribly funny. I mean, I actually improved a few of them, and I thought they were a bit silly in the end. I decided not to do it anymore. But at the same time I was doing that, there was a guy, you might remember this now, but there was at that time there was somebody putting up homophobic posters around Limerick, and they were extremely well done. They had it was a very artistic way of doing it, very eye-catching, very simple, beautiful. Whoever came up with it, it was very intelligent, very wrong. But I mean, there was ructions over this person putting up these homophobic posters. So the guards thought I might have been one of the people involved. And so in 20 years living in Limerick, that was the sum total of my problems with the Gardaí.
And it wasn't even you.
Fast forward to 2015 when the bank decides to repossess that house, and I'm kicked out and I'm looking for a place to stay, and this flat turns up in Kilkee, and it's also in the process of being repossessed, and so I was told I could stay here for a while. I thought I'd be here 6 months, maybe at the most 3-6 months kind of thing. So I'd said I'll do a small grow cannabis, you know, just 4 or 5 plants kind of thing.
Yeah.
And well, I unfortunately, in that, when I was doing that first grow, I was knocked down off my bicycle, and the Gardaí, there was a guard, one of these fabulous Gardaí. I mean, people complain about the Gardaí and with good reason, like, but there are fabulous guys in there as well. And this guy, he went around to every blooming security camera around they could find to see if there anybody passing by around the time. Unfortunately, there was a funeral in Kilkee that night, so there was hundreds of cars coming that you wouldn't expect. So, long story short, the guy got away with it. But I mean, he came along then to give me a letter explaining that he'd done his best and all the rest of it. Like, and he came along at about 6 o'clock on a Wednesday evening when I was just sitting down after dinner having a spliff, and I was no way I was answering the door. They knew I was inside. They could hear me inside, and I wasn't answering the door, and they twigged it. Your man is fucking smoking cannabis. So they arrived along the next day, busted.
Oh, no.
And since then, in the 5 years, I mean, that was after like only 6 months that I was here in Kilkee at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from a place like 5 years in Holland. This is like drinking alcohol, you'd say, or less harmful than alcohol, really. I mean, you get the only hangover you get off cannabis is you fucking like dopey, sleepy. You know, I mean, if you're whereas the hangover from alcohol is Jesus Christ, never again. Oh, what did I do last night?
Horrors.
Exactly. Like, so whereas cannabis is like, oh, fuck it, you know, you're just not with it, you know, you're not kind of on the ball.
And you're back on.
Well, yeah, or a bit of speed if you're if you're into that kind of thing, you know. But I mean, people forget, you know, that fucking caffeine is a drug. You know, people talk about alcohol and drugs, like, you know, I mean, they're all drugs.
Yeah.
But like, so I mean, where was I? Lost my train of thought. But like,
you got the knock on the door. The cops came, raided you.
Yeah. So so I mean, they prosecuted me, and I mean, I thought this is bizarre. I mean, Jesus Christ, cannabis, like, I mean, and they were fanatical. I mean, they were coming in the door, they were looking for they're hero cops. They're saving the day, busting
Yeah.
this guy who's
Thinking they're
smoking
coming into
cannabis. Like,
Pablo Escobar's house, like.
oh, Jesus. I mean, it was a major big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
to something, cannabis is like, as I said, I come from a perspective of 5 years in Holland and just decided to stop smoking it because I couldn't be bothered like smoking it anymore. And these guys, they were hell for leather. So, I mean, I get online. I decided to start this Facebook page. Why does nobody start a political party to legalize cannabis? I mean, so I decided to Facebook. I thought, Jesus, do you know what? There are thousands of people out there who support legalization of cannabis. I'll have people belting down my door looking to join. Like, and I mean, unfortunately, I didn't realize that the fortunate side of politics is that it is probably the most boring activity you can think of. I mean, politics, it's just a slog day after day, little
Yeah.
things here and there. You get one person to join you, you get another person.
It's soul
And
destroying
so, I
is what it
mean,
is.
pardon?
It's soul destroying. It's only a
Well,
certain
yeah,
type of
I mean,
person who wants to actually be a politician. Like I ran in an election myself, like, but by no means, like, geez, God, no, I don't want to be a politician. I want to go up and I want to see policy changes happen in this country. I want to see our, like, the future better for our kids and things like, but man, I think it takes a certain kind of person that actually wants to be a career politician. Like it's soul destroying is what it is. And it's a
well, I mean,
popularity contest at the best part.
I mean, I mean, it happened to me several times that I actually worked out this post I was going to write, and I mean, did 5 or 6 drafts of it, got it perfect, I thought, and then all the comments come back. Oh, how can you think of that? How can you say this? This is absolutely terrible. I mean, like, for instance, I was saying like that in one of those posts that in Thailand, I've been up in the north of Thailand, and I was actually meant to go out on the opium trail and go out smoking opium one night in these
Okay.
villages out. I never did because I drank the Mekong whiskey and landed on my head. I spent a week in a Chiang Mai bed recovering from that. But I was chatting to people around the place about, and I mean, you think like that. Why isn't there like, why are they all addicted to opium? Why aren't they? I mean, but the information I got back from people in Chiang Mai, which is where you'll meet people coming and going, buying their opium, is that you'd have to be the greatest idiot in the world because you're going to get addicted. I mean, they've been growing this stuff for generations. They know what it's like. They know what happens to you if you smoke it. You're going to end up, you'll be up half the night till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and you've got to get up at 6 o'clock then to go out to feed the chickens and the pigs and the hens and your opium patch and all that. And you're going to be too tired to do that. And then you're going to miss all your day's work. You're going to have no dinner that night, and you're going to be, so what are you going to do? Smoke some more opium. And you'll be, so I mean, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Like, so I mean, I wrote in a post one day like that. One of the reasons that people are afraid of cannabis is that we're just not used to it. I mean, most people, I met a guy one time who would have a joint first thing in the morning, and he wouldn't smoke all the whole rest of the day until the evening. And over time, I figured out that he's probably got some kind of a condition that it helps, because most people, if you have a joint first thing in the morning, then your second joint is going to be about 2 hours after that, and you're stoned all bloody day. And you'll waste the day. I mean, so I mean, I thought I'd make this fairly general point, that we're lacking a knowledge base here in Ireland. We know that if you're drinking a pint at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be fecked for the day. Like, so I mean, we understand that, so people don't do it. So I mean, I wrote this post thinking, that it's only the idiots that get addicted to opium in northern Thailand. And all I heard back was like, oh, Jesus Christ, they're not idiots, these poor misfortunes. I eventually figured out that if you want to be a politician, you've got to say the most bland, meaningless things that nobody can take offense to. Because if somebody takes offense, then that person will be posting and replying and all the rest of it. And all you're doing then is dealing with this person or these people who've taken a negative view, and the positive thing that you want to get out there is completely lost. So I mean, politicians, I understand why politicians don't say anything, because no matter what you say, you get fucking.
But it's lost in the audience there in that regard, like, because when you talk about opium, straight away people think about heroin, but heroin is a pharmaceutical grade drug like diamorphine. It's not what actual opium is. It's the equivalent of saying THC is cannabis. THC is just a compound found in cannabis, diamorphine. It's a compound that's taken from the opium plant and made into heroin. So yeah, there's definitely something there, but like you're definitely touching off a sensitive subject there when it comes to addiction around heroin and stuff, like, because there definitely is people who, through no fault of their own, fall into that. And then if somebody thinks you're calling them an idiot for that, then yeah. But if you
Yeah,
think
well,
about it in
yeah,
the context of the guys out in Thailand, the farmers, then,
yeah.
and it is a case of, well, if he's abusing his own crop and stuff, like he's a bit of an idiot, like, in that regard. So
Well,
it's
he
in
knows what's going to
context.
happen. Like,
It's in,
I mean, people in those countries, they know that what's going to happen to you if you do this stuff. If you don't,
yeah.
it's okay. If some tourist comes along or somebody, I mean, it'd be like if some relative, if you were living in Holland. Like, I mean, when I was living in Holland, most of the Dutch people I knew had no interest in cannabis. Like,
Yeah.
they've their basketball, baseball, looking after their kids, work. I mean, would you take? There's
Mhm.
just they have no time for it. You know, I mean, so I mean, and the only time most of the Dutch people that I knew, the only time they ever tried cannabis or smoked it is if somebody came over visiting Holland from abroad, and they want to try to find out what these Dutch coffee shops are like. And it's like,
That's
I
to
mean,
bring
when I
them
had
out.
a cousin. Well, I had a cousin come over from the States one time, and I've only once ever been to see the Cliffs of Moher, Doolin, and all these sites because around Limerick and Clare, because he came over. I wouldn't. I mean, so I mean, people in Holland, they're used to it. So I mean, they just pay no attention to it. Like, you know, I mean, it's like, if you want to try it, I mean, fine. But I mean, have a beer just as easily, or a cup of coffee. You know, I mean, it's not it's not the bogeyman that it's made
Yeah.
out to be. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think if we were to maybe see it decriminalize and a market open up for hair first, you might have a bit of a spike in use initially, with the kind of the curiosity and all of that. Like, but I think that would level out, and you would just have the people who want to consume it and the people who don't. It's just like drink. We have a percent of our population who consume alcohol. We have a percent who consume it regularly, and we have a percent who don't consume it at all. But you know, it's not that bad of a thing, and it's just when cannabis is around, then when it's normalized, again, it would be much like the Dutch model and other places. It won't have that allure to it. It won't have that attractiveness where, you know, curiosity.
Well, I mean, if you're a rebellious teenager, and the bad guy in every flipping movie you see is always the drug dealer, you know, I mean, it's the bogeyman of it's modern day kind of witchcraft, you know. I mean, geez, stay away from those people, you know. But
Yeah.
you made a very interesting point about, you know, a spike after being legalized. I was checking this out when Canada and legalized it, there was a spike. But if you looked at it, wasn't a spike among teenagers. The teenager, if the statistics showed that the people that actually took it up again, the spike came from
Yeah.
guys like you and me.
Well, it
That's it.
was. I
Well,
think.
obviously, a bit older than you, guys in their 40s and 50s who
Yeah.
used to smoke in college, and
That's it.
and it's now legal. And said, "Oh, geez, we'll give it a blast." Like, you know, I mean, that's where the spike came from. People. So I mean, if you want to, you could argue very easily. I don't know, it might be specious arguing, but you could say
Mm.
that the only people you're protecting by keeping it illegal are those poor 40 and 50-year-old solicitors and bankers and accountants out there who tried it in college, and we're protecting them from going back on the cannabis. I mean, they're people old enough to make up their own mind, surely. I mean, if at 50 years of
Definitely.
age you don't know your own mind, you might as well give up. I mean,
Yeah, well, how
I
many
mean,
of those lawyers and doctors, as you say, 40 plus, like, are consuming alcohol because they just have nothing else to consume in the evening? Like, maybe if we gave people that alternative there to alcohol, like, again, like, I'm not anti-alcohol and stuff, like, but I think if you were to have a bit of cannabis in the evening as opposed to a glass of whiskey, I think the cannabis would be probably a bit less detrimental to your health than the glass of whiskey. But again, I'm not anti-alcohol. Like, I think you should have the
I
freedom to
am.
choose.
I had two drinks. There's a guy living near me in Kilkee here. Well, there's two people I know. They're sharing a house near Kilkee, and your man, they're both from England, and they have this cider which you can't buy in Ireland, which comes in a jug. You know those jugs you hold by one finger and you do it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
I went out to him about 3 weeks ago, passed by the house, said, "Oh, how's it going, Mixie?" He called in, and he gave me a few glasses, and then a few more glasses, and then there was a shot of this came out, and a shot. Eventually, I drew the line once he brought out the vodka. I tried
Oh
a
no.
shot of vodka, and 2 days later, I was still still recovering from the flipping
Yeah.
alcohol. I mean, it's like, I mean, I say, I mean, I'm not against alcohol, like, but I mean, for
You're
myself,
against
I know,
abusing it.
well, I know my body just doesn't appreciate alcohol being thrown
Yeah.
into it. I mean, I can smoke cannabis all the day long, and the worst that happens is that the next day I'll be dopey, I'll be tired, too tired to read a book properly and take it in
Yeah,
properly.
yeah. There's a local cider company down here called Stonewells. They make some cider down in Kinsale,
All
and
right.
at time to time I enjoy one or two in the evenings there when I'm relaxing by herself. But yeah, even if I have one, I feel it the next morning in my stomach. Like there's just a bit of an unsettledness there, like for a couple of hours in the morning. Like if I have two, I definitely feel it. Like, but sometimes
Jeez,
even
well,
after
you're
one,
a young man. You're only in your 30s, are you? You're only a young man,
I'm
young fella
31
still.
yesterday.
Whoa! Happy birthday.
Nice one, thanks.
Good one, good one. I presume you had a reasonable. It was celebrated in the proper fashion.
It
I suppose.
was, yeah. I made
Good,
some
good,
lovely chocolates there Tuesday night, and we went off and watched a movie.
good man yourself.
uh, Heavily
That's a
medicated.
whole. There's a whole side. I mean, like I'm an old fogey. Like I mean, I know that for a fact because I mean, when I look at what's happening on the internet, I mean, there's things called. I don't know what they are now. I mean, there's all these concentrates, shatter, and all these things. They're like 99% THC. Like I mean,
Yeah.
I like my cannabis. Just I don't want. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I do not want these super strength cannabis. I would
No.
love to be able to just get just a nice buzz. You know, one or two joints in the evening. That'll do me grand. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I might go crazy and have 3, 4 joints. Oh my God, it's like that would be a wild night. Like,
But this,
but
I think, it reflects back to what we were saying a while ago. Like, the current market is in a market of prohibition, and if we were to look at alcohol prohibition, what we've seen there is people went from consuming beer to consuming like more heavily concentrated alcohol forms like whiskey and things. So what we're seeing now
moonshine.
again, moonshine, yeah, you know, it's quite similar to what we're seeing now. It's within the cannabis market, all of these extracts, concentrates. It's about getting the highest amount of THC into you as you can. But when
Can I
you
ask you
go,
something?
yeah, go for it.
I got it. I grew for years until I mean, I just got busted so many times that I stopped doing it. Like, but I've seen cannabis that's been sold online from these well-known stores, and it doesn't look anything like the cannabis that I was growing for years. I mean, this stuff is like it's not smooth. It looks like I don't know what you'd call it. It looks like a green thing. You know, it's completely. It's like
Solid
one
and
big
dense.
mass of.
Mm,
I mean, I've never grown buds that were like that in my
yeah,
entire life. I mean, and I was growing for about 10 years. Like, so, I mean, I
I,
don't know what this stuff. I mean, again, and just the tiniest little bit of it was like, Jesus Christ, this stuff is. So,
yeah.
I mean, people
Growers
need
have
to.
definitely gotten their stuff down these days, but strains have definitely improved. I think access to quality strains has largely improved. You can go online now and buy, God only knows how many different strains you can buy, and the variety of the chemo profiles there. Like it's kind of you know, what do you like, and it's probably available really, like in terms of THC to CBD ratio, CBG, CBN, all of the terpenes. Like it's becoming a very fine art in some of the places where the market is able to actually just flourish, pardon the pun. But like what I was going to say earlier is that how the market has changed in those places where it's legal now is people have now pushed away from actually consuming some of these higher concentrated products like the shatters and all of this stuff, and they're looking more towards the terpene profiles. They're flavor chasing. They're basically looking for orange this, you know, chocolate that, you know, and they're looking for more flavors and effects than, like, you know, this will make you giggly, this will make you feel like creative in the mind, this is going to make you couch locked, you know, and people are able to make a much more educated decision then at the point of purchase. Whereas I still think here in Ireland, a lot of the times it's about getting stoned,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
if you're an artist or a creative person, then maybe you're looking for that that inspiration from it. But by and large, I think a lot of people just want to use it as a form of like unwinding in the evening and just relaxing and maybe socializing with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like I mean, it's their own it's their own choice. Like, I mean, most people can, by the time they get to their adulthood, you know, have a fair idea of what they're about and what suits them and what doesn't suit them. and are able to make that a rational, reasonable choice like that. As I said, I mean, I lived in Holland for 5 years. There was, okay, I mean, the only people I saw with problems with drugs were people who obviously were addicted to heroin. And I mean, I saw some tragedy. I mean, you come across people like, and you feel like doing something for them, like, but I mean, Jesus Christ, they're so far gone that they don't understand anything you're saying, other than unless there's some couple of guilders, as it was in those days, going over to them there. So like, I mean, cannabis, Jesus, you'd really want to be, I mean, of all the drugs in the world to make illegal, I mean, cannabis, I mean, it's so that you'd have to, I mean, I tried searching online. You know, I was going to write an affidavit for this upcoming case of mine. So I tried finding out online what studies are there out there which showed the link between psychosis and cannabis, that proved that there's a valid link, and there are no studies out there that show that you and me are unlikely, or most people are likely to develop any problems with it. There's no, so I mean, the only study that I could ever come across was this thing done back in the 1970s, where they had these test monkeys, and they put these gas masks over them, and then the tube going into it, and they give them cannabis, and they started out with the same dose that you'd expect a human to get. That had no effect on the monkey brains when they were dissected. So they eventually had, the only way that they could show that there was an actual harm done to the monkey brains was they had to give them so much cannabis that they fucking had hypoxia, that they weren't getting enough oxygen to breathe.
Yeah,
so
I think what they were supposed to do in that study is they were supposed to give them like about 30 seconds worth of cannabis smoke a couple of times a day. But what they ended up doing was giving them 5 minutes or so of non-stop cannabis smoke. Like, they completely deprived them of oxygen, essentially.
Yeah.
And then they used that data for years. Like, it was the Nixon administration, like, it really latched onto that. And some of your, just say no, you're Nancy Reagan or whoever she was. Like, a lot of those people did, and that still gets brought up today. Like, oh, the cannabis damages your brain and it causes this, but it's actually, there's more evidence now to the contrary of that there's neuroprotective compounds in there. There's compounds in there that will help protect your brain to the degrading effects of aging. Like, we're all aging. Like, aging is the disease of the body, essentially, and cannabis has a lot of evidence there to show that it is a good way of preventing some of these effects of aging, you know, not preventing, but maybe mitigating, reducing, slowing down, you know, but it's not a cure-all. It helps.
It may do. I mean, they're every single day. I mean, I subscribe now. As I say, about 4 years ago when I started Ireland's Cannabis Party, the Facebook page, I decided to get into this. You know, I subscribe to scientific magazines, all that. So I'd be getting information as it comes in. And okay, in 5 years ago, you might get an article every week or two. But now it's like there's like 5 or 6 articles every day. Every single day, there's somebody coming out with some new benefit, or some new study shows that this. There's no study out there that I'm aware of which says cannabis cures, ding, 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 ding. But there's all this very good, there's enough evidence there that any scientist or any doctor who's like interested in curing disease they should be going crazy. Why are we not researching this amazing flipping plant? Like, and
stigma. It's all
unfortunately,
sadly.
Pardon?
It's all stigma, sadly, within the research field. Like, there's just too much stigma. If you want to research cannabis, you're going to get looked down upon a lot of the times, if you're going to look at it in a positive way, a lot of the times.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's much easier to go with the flow rather than.
And there's issues there with funding as well. You know, if with funding, a lot of the researchers, they apply for grants. So it's the guys who are given the grants. A lot of the times, they're not giving it to studies that want to find positive benefits to using, say, cannabis or other psychedelic drugs, you know.
So I wrote a post, or I posted an article this morning on Ireland's Cannabis Party. So in that exact same thing, that the vast majority of the funding that goes for cannabis research goes into researching its negative effects.
Yeah.
It's minuscule, apparently. Again, I don't know what the percentages are. I'm like most cannabis campaigners, I assume it's around 90% for the negative side. But I don't know. Is being honest about it, like. But again, but it's not me saying that. It's not you saying that. This is coming out from reputable people, that the vast majority of the research that's done is into the negative things.
Yeah.
Whereas what they, I mean, like this thing, when even a year ago, this is like 3 years after I really started getting involved. Even a year ago, I was no interest. What are these terpenes? Are you joking? You go, hey, there's THC, CBD. And then I find out not just are there all these terpenes that have beneficial effects. There's CBG, there's a whole list of other CB question mark
yeah, a lot of the cannabinoids.
There's a massive amount out there. Like, and I mean, I once sat down. I tried to work out if you wanted to do the kind of research that politicians say they need. We need to research all the if you wanted to research every single chemical in cannabis and compare its effects at different levels and compare its effects with the other what they're saying, the single isolates, they want to isolate THC and isolate. If you were to isolate all of the chemicals and then figure out what interaction is going on between each of them, it would take you more time than the age of the universe. Yeah. Because there's like 400, if you work it out, there's 400 different chemicals or 200 chemicals. If you want to work out how to combine 200 different chemicals, how many combinations there are and permutations, it's almost infinite.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And you come back then, and there's people out there who they talk about the entourage effect, that you need all these other things as well. But the truth is that we just don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
We need 20 years of more research. I mean, all the research that hasn't been done for the last 50 years. That needs to be done.
You can definitely look at these compounds on their own and then take from that what you will. Like some of the compounds there the terpenes have been shown to improve the permeability of certain cannabinoids across the blood-brain barrier, which is an amazing benefit. Like, so if you have these two compounds together, one enhances the uptake of the other. If you have THC and you want to get it into the CB1 receptors, which are located all around the brain, like having that terpene there along with your THC, there's there you go. Like again, it's hard to say that it's proven that they'll work together. It'll be easy to prove with the two compounds alone, but when you're working in a full spectrum extract, it is very hard to say it. But that's where a lot of these studies are trying to take off now lately, is they want to patent some of these things, basically. So they want to take like synthetic THC, synthetic CBD, and combine it with other synthetic compounds based off of natural compounds, essentially. And they want to patent these and make drugs and sell them to people, essentially. They don't want us to be able to do what you were doing, which was growing your own few plants at home and not being sucking on the tit of the state, whether it be you needing medical cannabis or off of the tit of some criminals out there because you want your recreational cannabis. You took it upon yourself to grow your own. So I just want to ask you a bit more about that, actually. How many plants was it that you were caught with that time when the cops arrived?
Well, when they came that time, I had, I think I had 6. How many was it again? I think I had. It was in the mid-teens. I think I had 6 plants. I'm not joking you. I had 6 plants. They were so laden with resin. They were almost there. I mean, you could, if you touch them, the buds, the top bud with your finger, it'll be flipping soaked in resin. Yeah. And so, I mean, they were all, I think I had 6 plants that were almost there. And I had roughly 10 more that were in the veg. They were outside of the tent and in the veg stage. And they were only after about 3 weeks. So, I mean, whether they're a week old or nearly ready to flower is all the same. They're still valued at 800 euros each, to the Gardaí. Yeah. Like, so.
Yeah. But so sometimes they can play a bit of discretion there, I think. There is a bit of discretion in the law around that 800 euro valuation. If the plant is below a certain maturity, you could argue that they wouldn't apply the 800 value to that plant or to those plants if there was 10 of them in veg. But sometimes if they're over a certain size, like that's what they determine by maturity rather than whether it's in flower or in veg, which is sad.
Well, I mean, if you work it out, they say cannabis costs 20 euros per gram, 800 euros per plant. That means it's 40 grams per plant. I mean, I've grown enough cannabis to know that 40 grams is a good harvest per plant. 30 grams would be 30 to 35 would be more normal. I mean, 35
Would you?
grams of. Oh, well, I mean, I mean, I've had plants get 80 to 90 grams off a plant. Like, I mean, huge
Yeah.
fuckers. Like, but I mean, that's unusual. And
Yeah,
maybe it's just my terribly lazy
I
gardening
think
technique.
there's a bit more green thumb. The skill needs to be worked on
Oh, yeah.
there. Yeah.
I mean,
I
there might be people out there who well, what they do is they actually give it the amount of water that's required. I mean, when I was watering plants, I just soak the things up as much water as I can stick into them. That's it, done for the next 2 or 3 days, and feck off and do whatever I'm doing.
you lazy
Whereas
gardener.
if you're one of these people that if you're a proper gardener, like, I mean, you'd be expecting maybe 40 to 50 grams per plant, I suppose, maybe. But anyway, I'm thinking of writing up an affidavit for my. I've a case coming up on the 22nd of September.
Okay.
And I'm thinking of writing an affidavit which will say, listen, the Gardaí value the plants they've taken off me at 800 per plant. This is what it cost me to grow one plant. I can point out that the Gardaí say it costs 20 euros per gram. I can say that I don't sell to anybody. I don't even give it away. So, and cannabis only costs me €1 per gram to actually grow. So
Yeah.
I'll be writing up I'll be hopefully putting that into an affidavit in the next week or two, because I'll be defending myself at
Good.
my upcoming trial. Like, so, but I mean, that's a real, I don't know. I mean, if anybody out there watching this is wondering about defending yourself, I'd say don't. I mean, geez, give yourself a break. And I mean, for instance, I come out in my upcoming trial. I've got 3 charges: cultivation, possession, and
Sale and
dealing.
supply.
And the only reason they're charging me sale and supply is because they caught me with roughly, I think it's 80 to 100. I can't remember now, 100 grams roughly. And so I mean that goes over some threshold they have. So like that their charge. And so if you're out there, if anybody, but a good solicitor can usually get these extraneous things dealt with out with the opposition, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So like I'm still in 2 minds as to whether to go into court in 3 weeks' time and say, listen, I really need a solicitor. I made a mistake trying to represent myself, and so I'm still a bit up in the air as to how
Have
to
you been to
handle it.
court already for this? So have they brought you in for the hearing?
Well, over the last 4 years, I've been arrested about half a dozen times, and I've been searched more often than that. Like, so I mean, the latest.
Is this case currently for these plants that you were caught with 4 years ago?
No. This is for what happened. What happened back in February? I was raided last March of last year.
Okay. Before we go into that, can we jump back to the earlier one that you got raided on, the first one? What happened in that court case? So, how did that play out, or did it play out?
I have the thing here in front of me. I ended up getting convicted, and possession. I was convicted of possession, and they were also trying to charge me with something else and taken in consideration, whatever that means, and cultivation. You know something? I'm not as well organized as I should be. I should have a list of every single time I was raided, every charge, everything that happened, because as I said, I've been raided so many times that they're kind of. They're not blending one into the others, but I mean, to distinguish one. But from that particular one, the first time I was charged with possession, the judge was very lenient. He gave me a €200 fine, and I told him straight out. I said, Judge, I must refuse to pay the fine.
Good man.
And straight, I mean, and I'm not going to. I hope I don't come off as trying to say the judge is a great guy or anything, because he's not. He's a fucking tough as nails, and he wants to be like.
Yeah.
But like the first time he came across me, he dealt with me. He set one charge aside, just set it aside, and then the other one he gave me the €200 fine, and he was very polite about it, very decent about it. He was smiling. There was no intimidation involved. But the last time, I mean, I was up in court in June, and that was when the initial just to hear the charge, and. I mean, his attitude has gone totally. I mean, he's seen me. He's been up in front of him 3 or 4 times now. So I think he's got all the excuse he needs to throw the book at me, if you know what I mean. So
fair enough. Yeah.
that's what I'm expecting. Sorry.
No, that's fair enough. You
Sorry?
definitely got lucky the first time around there with the getting off with the cultivation
Well,
and dealing. I think you got lucky that time. So you were back in there now again in June. So what was it for in June again? Was it more
the
growing?
possession, cultivation, possession, and sale or supply. Well, I have it here in front of me.
Oh, so you're up for the exact same again, so in June
Oh
or in
yeah, well, it's just
September,
that they kind of different grow. Like, I mean,
a different grow.
they found the first grow, charged me for that, took all the stuff away. The
Was
last grow that they found, they took away. I mean, what happened? Last year, what happened was that I was searched. They found by Ennis Drug Squad came down, rather than the local Gardaí. It was Ennis came down.
jeez.
They asked me why. I think, from what they were saying to me, I think that they were somebody inside had told them that I was some dangerous somebody is messing with me, if you know what I mean. That
Yeah.
there was one guard actually came up, he threw his arm around me when he saw another guard coming in, because he was expecting me to be assaulted. He put his arms around me, put his arms around me like this, and to protect me from the other guard, like, so, like, and I don't think this was a case of, playing the good cop bad cop thing, like, because I heard them talking later, and they were saying, geez, your man isn't, like, I couldn't hear them said after that, like, the general gist of what was they were saying is that I wasn't this, whatever they were expecting to come across when they raided me, it wasn't. But
Yeah.
anyway, they took away stuff belonging to me, including some lights and a ballast.
Ah,
I wrote to them in February this year with a registered letter. I said, okay, lads, you haven't charged me for this stuff. You still have all my belongings, and will you kindly return it to me if you're not going to charge me? And then 3 weeks later, I got a summons in the post, and to be in court in June, which is what I'm going through at the moment. And
yeah.
so I went into court, and I took up to Ennis in June because the Kilrush court house is closed because of COVID-19. So I went up to Ennis, and there was a couple of sisters in court on the day, and 2 of them I'd seen before, and I didn't want to be dealing with them again. And I went up to another guy, and after the judge saying this could go to the High Court and the rest of it, there's a possibility it could go to the High Court, said, I went over to this guy and asked him, I said, will you do this, what the judge was talking about, take to the High Court? And he said, no. He just said, no.
Jeez.
And I went over to one other person in the court. I went over and I said to her, would she be willing to do it? She said, oh, she didn't know that I was from Kilkee, and so she says, I'm trying to get rid of me. I'm in Kilrush, so I mean it wouldn't suit you at all. And then I said, I'm living in Kilkee, just down the road from you. Okay, well, you can come along to the office. So I mean, the solicitors in court had no interest in pursuing the case as I want. I mean, every solicitor I've ever come across has all given me the exact same advice: plead guilty and let the judge try, tell the judge you'll be a good boy from now
Yeah.
on. And
Essentially, just
so, I
throw
mean,
yourself at the mercy of the judge.
yeah,
Just,
yeah.
I'll never do it
So,
again, sir.
yeah, I mean, that's what they're expecting. And I hate to say it, but I mean, it's that's what a judge will expect you to do. And if you don't, then you're not respecting him or his office or the court, and he's got to have to flip and
Which flies in the face of, like, if you look up what respect actually means, like, surely it's more respectful to tell a person a truth than a blatant lie. Like, surely it's more respectful to say, look, judge, I'm not sorry for what I done, and I'll probably be back here again. We need to kind of fix this. This is more a political issue than it is like a criminal issue now at this stage, because our politicians have had numerous times to address this, and they still haven't. And people like yourself, myself, now have been brought before the courts, still being threatened with imprisonment. Like, it's just ridiculous.
well, like, I mean, I tried saying to the judge that I was trying to introduce into evidence that Professor David Nutt's report in 2007, amended 2010, and I started off by saying that we had a teacher called Leo Varadkar, who was a doctor who understood the what the scientific. I mean, people, the average person, if you ask them what is the scientific method, they might hum and haw a bit. They probably have a rough idea what it means, like. But there's very few people who would actually say, well, the scientific method is probably the best method that human beings have ever figured out on how to get to the truth.
Yeah.
You can argue, there's lots of ways of trying to argue for the truth, going back thousands of years to ancient philosophers, meditating and all kinds of argument and discussion, the way of finding it. But the best way that we found in the last 5,000 years of civilization has been the scientific method. And when the scientific method comes up with a result, and that result is pretty unequivocal, like Professor David Nutt's report 2007, then anybody who believes in rationality, not the mind science, rationality, simple, plain, ordinary logic, would have to admit that, I mean, if the scientific method is telling you that cannabis is less dangerous than alcohol, it's not more dangerous, it's definitely not so dangerous it should be illegal. The scientific method, then if you're a rational thinking, logical person, then I was hoping to put this to the judge. And I started out by saying, well, we had Leo Varadkar as a Taoiseach, and he was a doctor, and I was about to go on about, well, if he can understand and understands perfectly well that Professor David Nutt's report is valid, that the very fact that in the 10 years or the 13 years since it's been released, that it hasn't been contradicted, that, I mean, if you were a scientist out there and you could actually prove that Professor David Nutt's report was wrong, that he'd made serious mistakes in it, you'd be world famous. There'd be CBS, NBC, you'd be on Fox News morning, noon and night.
Yeah. Well, they would have you on the podium. They would put you out in the
Yeah.
forefront, like, and make sure everyone hears that you've disproven
Yeah.
what this man had to say. But if
Finally,
people
proven.
don't know what Professor Nutt had to say, I think he ranked on a list of drugs of about 20 substances, cannabis, hash, and skunk. He's dealt with them separately. And I think cannabis and hash were like number 19 and 20. And he said skunk, if there is a thing, like in inverted commas, he said it'd be up there maybe around number 16. Which wasn't that far up along the list either. Like, and he said up there, number 1 and 2, alcohol and tobacco, pretty much.
Yeah, by a mile. If you look at the graphs that he drew, like, I mean, it's like, I mean, even if when you think about it now, like, I mean, tobacco can kill you. It actually kills roughly something between you can argue the toss, somewhere between 20 and 33% of the people that smoke it. It'll kill them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, I mean, how more dangerous does it can you possibly get? This drug can kill you, not definitely will, but can kill you. I mean, it's perfectly understandable why, and alcohol as well, why these two drugs are so dangerous.
And we look at those drugs, right? We imagine those drugs in the hands, like alcohol was in the hands of criminals not too long ago in America. Like, but imagine if we had those two drugs in the hands of criminals today. Imagine the death rate from them then. When you introduce all of the other stuff that we have to deal with when we're consuming illegal drugs, which is the quality control issues, you know, the lack of certainty whether what you're going to be consuming is what it should be. You know, imagine if we were still faced with a day where you go down and you get your whiskey off of your whiskey dealer, and it actually has a load of methanol in it, and you end up going blind or dying, you know. It has happened when alcohol was illegal, for sure. But no, we made alcohol legal. We reduced the deaths majorly, even though they're still the top ranking, like out of drugs, like the harm they do in our society. We've majorly reduced it through proper education, proper regulation, you know, and just breaking down that stigma that exists. You know, if you're a person who drinks alcohol, you're not ashamed of drinking alcohol. And if you're a person who develops an addiction problem with that, you don't get ashamed by that either. You know, we have a nice word for it. Oh, you're an alcoholic. Oh, that's okay. Come on here. Look, come down with other alcoholics and we look after you. You know, we have the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, you know. Whereas when we deal with other drugs, it's narcotics and junkies, you know.
So how many times have you heard somebody, even the most sensible person you've ever come across on the television, radio, say the expression drugs and alcohol?
Drugs and alcohol, yeah.
I mean, until the day comes when people, I mean, very few people that go for a pint would say that they're going out having drugs. Very few people that give their child a cup of tea accepts that they're actually giving their child a drug in the first thing in the morning. If they're giving a tea first thing in the morning, like, I mean, we're brought up to think, because we're brought up with them. We don't think of them as drugs. You know, we think of them as just we think of alcohol as just something to have.
Every time a person repeats that term, alcohol and drugs, like essentially what they're doing is they're reinforcing. They're reinforcing that brainwave in people like that. alcohol is separate to drugs, alcohol and drugs. Like every time you
Mhm.
say that to a person, especially a person of stature in our society, like Leo Varadkar or any of these other guys like who hold a position in our society, like if they refer to alcohol and drugs, they're just reinforcing that belief that alcohol is not a drug. Oh, these other drugs, and then you have alcohol. Like, and then when we talk about drugs, so if we talk about cannabis, we can't talk about cannabis without talking about drugs, you know, because cannabis is a drug, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
all this badness. But when we talk about alcohol, we can talk about alcohol as alcohol. It's not put into this thing as
Well,
drugs.
well, I think people understand the risks of alcohol, and so they're not afraid of alcohol.
Mm,
I mean, they know that not to go out at night at 12:30 when the pubs are shut, because you guaranteed if you're going to come across some idiot who's going to having the greatest night of his life, and you're just going down to the shop for a packet of fags or a pint of milk or something like, or whatever reason you have, and you don't feel like having a party in the middle of the street.
no,
And what do you mean you fucking what you mean? It's been they've actually proven, you mightn't have heard of this one now, that they've actually proven scientifically that alcohol makes people, this was done back in 2012, but it makes people more aggressive. So I mean I mean it's something that we all know, and we all accept that it is the case, like. But like when they come out with reports then that's showing that, as I said, I mean, I was trying to, with Professor David Nutt, you'd think that should have changed the world. It should have been a case of, now that Professor David Nutt has come along, we're finally able to breathe freely. That, you know, that down the road that these politicians will, they'll have to see sense. I mean, how can they ignore science? Like,
yeah,
and I mean, if Matty McGrath, who was reared far from hypotenuses, and you can be telling him what squared is equal to x squared, and he doesn't. Oh, go ahead. I mean, you've people like that. It doesn't matter what you say to them. Oh, sure, I don't believe in that anyway. You know, I mean, but when we had a scientist as our Taoiseach, when we had somebody who understood and understand the scientific method, who has no excuse. I mean, it's just like it's you nearly feel like giving up. You know, I mean,
yeah.
it's like
But
so. I mean,
think about what we were saying at the start of this though. Like it takes a certain kind of person that actually runs to be a politician. Like, you know, when you meet and talk to these guys, like they'll agree with you, like, oh, cannabis should be legalized. Like I bet you if you probably talk to Leo Varadkar, he'd probably say to you, yeah, it should be legalized, but he's not willing to do anything about it because he might lose votes, and he's not in this position to help people like you or me. He's only in this position to maintain his position or to climb higher up along the career ranks of the politicians, which is, I don't know, maybe to aim to get to Europe or to be on one of these boards or councils when they leave government. Like, but like these guys, man, they don't have morals. Like I always say it, like, but any man, any person who lets a mother of a sick child walk from Cork
yeah,
to
yeah.
Dublin, not once but twice, they're sick individuals. Like they're pitiful.
But
Like it's sad.
you've met Vera Toomey, I'm sure yourself.
I
Like I've
did,
met her
yeah,
just the once up in Dublin, like, and woman with an iron grip. I shook
yeah,
her hand. I mean, uh, how you could turn after how any feeling sensitive human being could speak to her, to Vera Toomey, and not be like, Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. Was there anything else I can do for you while I'm at it, kind of thing. I mean, she spent 4 hours with, what's his name, who's the Minister for Health at the
Simon
time,
Harris.
Simon Harris. And I mean, I'm sure you've met people like that yourself. You know, people who can talk till the cows come home, and so I mean, they spent an hour talking. They probably spent an hour talking. And what are you going to do now? Well, I can't. I mean, and eventually they had to leave after 4 hours because he'd go home for his dinner or something.
Yeah, you know.
You ask me what, like, but I mean, these people, I don't know why. I mean, the only logical reason that I can think of, and I don't know if logic is applicable, is that if you work it out to legalize cannabis, you have to unravel, because it's connected to the Poisons Acts, to acts going back to the 1940s. There's all these other acts that are all mixed in there. You have to deal with all of that. Then you'd have to legalize it. You'd have to figure out. I mean, I was a test engineer when I worked for Philips in Holland. If you're a tester, you have to figure out the standards for testing. Not just for standards for the what is strong, what's weak, and what so just to give you an idea like of, so you can get the labeling on the packets right. But then you have to work out the standards for the test equipment. How often does the test equipment have to be recalibrated?
Yeah.
There are things that there are 101 tiny little details, no, 101, 1,000,001 little details that you don't have to think about when it's all illegal. If you legalize it, it's a massive amount of work. I mean, anybody who says to you that legalizing cannabis is we just legalize it and it's grand, there's
Definitely,
a huge amount of work to be done.
Just because something takes a bit of time, it doesn't mean you put it off until later on. Like, it means you
it's
deal with
easier.
it today, and you start your tiptoe towards completing it. Like, if you want to walk a mile, it starts with one step. Although a mile might take you 10,000 steps to do, you start with one, and you follow it with the second, and you keep going on. Like, if we go back to when Gino Kenny put his bill forward to regulate medicinal cannabis, like, more than enough time has elapsed between now and then for them to have ironed out all of these issues that you so rightly brought up. Like, it's not a simple process. It definitely isn't. Like, we'll go on further. I'll go back to when Luke Wing Flanagan brought forward his bill, not only to do medicinal cannabis, but for the wider market for adults aged 18 and over. Again, we could have started back then. We could have just said, look, we're going to decriminalize cannabis first. And then this time next year, like, let's put a time limit on it, a year, give them a year. And at the end of the year, then they'll have a license process there for people to go in and set up their own stores. Like, we've had more than enough time. Like, the fact that we have to start tomorrow or next month, like, it's because of those guys who failed to take action before. But it shouldn't be an argument against us for doing it. Like, yes, legalization isn't going to be an easy process, but like, some of the most worthwhile things in life aren't easy to do. Like, and that's why they're worthwhile. Like, if it
was easy, they're not paid to do an easy job, are they? They get flipping 100 grand a year. But as you were talking there, it just occurred to me that, I mean, I go over to Belgium once a year and buy 5 kilos of tobacco, Samson tobacco, and it does me for the year. It's only 10 euros a packet, whereas here it's like 50 euros or something like. But you can buy absinthe in Belgium, and because it was banned back in during the First World War, it was banned because there was wormwood in it, and wormwood was supposed to be something drives you crazy or something. Like, if Vincent van Gogh or whatever, all these guys were into their absinthe, like, and Dracula and all these people, like, if you remember the 1990s, Benora, whatever face was. But anyway, I was trying to. I was asking somebody one day over in Dunn Stores when I was living in Anacostia in Limerick, and I was down at the local. No, it was Quinn's actually. Whatever supermarket I went into, I was mentioning that I just went back from Belgium and I bought these bottles of absinthe, and I was talking to the guy who's doing the off license section of the supermarket, and he said, yeah, well, if he brought in absinthe himself, laws or no laws, if he was selling absinthe in his store, you're talking about stuff that's like 80 proof or something. Like, I mean, it's stronger than vodka. Like, all it would take for him to be sacked out of his job or to be prosecuted or something awful will happen to him was one house party or one teenager who gets their hands on a bottle of absinthe and dies as a result, gets alcohol poisoning out of it. Like, so I think that one of the reasons that politicians in Ireland are so scared of legalizing any of the illegal drugs is that you're guaranteed somebody's going to get hurt. It's impossible that out of 4 million people, if say there's like 500,000 people smoking cannabis once a year, kind of thing, that I mean, there's somebody going to get hurt. I mean, it's just impossible.
That's fair enough. So if they're responsible for people getting hurt, if they brought in legalization, are they not equally as responsible for the people who get hurt because of prohibition?
I was just, before getting on to you today, I downloaded at something that I don't know why it never occurred to me before, but like the dangers of criminalization. And this article, there's a 25-page, I'll post it online when I'm finished reading it, but this guy talks about people being addicted to drug criminalization. Okay. That people have a psychological dependence on drug criminalization. Like parents, they have they've nothing else to do that they can do besides ban it. That there's nothing else for them. They're psychologically dependent on having laws against drugs, because if they weren't laws on drugs, so what would they do?
Morality would fall apart.
Well, yeah, but I mean there's one other thing I wanted to bring up with you, that just in case we go on too long and the people listening to this are bored out of their boxes after listening for half an hour, like. But this upcoming case that I have, I don't know whether I'll be able to ask the judge to represent myself, that I can get a solicitor because I need one. There's a lot of things up in the air, but my plan C at this stage now is that if worst comes to worst and I get jailed on the day, that I've against everything that I believe in, I'm willing to go on hunger strike. When I say everything I believe in, it's because I had stomach ulcers for 20 years. Okay. So I know that having stomach ulcers is like a fraction of the kind of agony that the hunger strikers that hunger strikers have to go through, and it leads to permanent injuries. I'm 56 years of age, so I mean I'm not like some 20 or 31-year-old who recovers from things like that. You know, I mean, it will do me terrible harm. But I'm proposing that if I do get jailed on the day, that I will go into Limerick prison and effectively go on hunger strike. Now, I mean, as I might have said this to you earlier offline, like that. I mean, I agree with the vast majority of cannabis smokers in Ireland that hunger strike is not it's not the way to go. Mm-hmm. It could end up doing harm to the cause that the people that are against cannabis, if it became a national issue, they'll be able to point. I have skeletons. I have entire graveyards of skeletons in my closet, if you know what I mean. They're things that I've gone through in my life. Jesus, awful. You wouldn't believe it if I was to tell you, like, they're so bad.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, the potential for something to backfire is a very real possibility. So it's not something that, but I cannot accept being sent to prison for cannabis. I mean, if I had a young family, or even older family, or people that were dependent on me, I wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, like 99.9% of people out there, I just, for the sake of my friends and family, I wouldn't even countenance, that's the word I'm looking for, using the hunger strike weapon. It's a drastic weapon to use, and it should only be used in terrible circumstances, like. So
yeah, but your back is against the wall, I think, in this situation. You've no other choice. Like, yeah, what else are you supposed to do? What else is in your tool bag?
I feel like that I've done everything I can do. I mean, I go around, I do a lot of voluntary work around Kilkee, picking up all, collecting litter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I haven't hit a guy a punch in the face since I was 10 years of age. I haven't hit someone in anger. I mean, I might hit my brother a box in the shoulder since then, but that's about it. Like, I mean, I'm as non-violent as you can fucking find. I mean, prison is a place for people who are so dangerous for society that we cannot let them loose, or they'll cause mayhem.
Yeah.
So like, and they put me in with those people. Like, they want me to say, okay, oh Jesus, yes, I'm so sorry, I'll do my year or 2 years, whatever they give me. Like, I just can't accept it.
Have you been in there before at all?
Pardon, sorry?
Have you been in prison before at all for cannabis or anything?
I once went. I got into this phase at one stage, walking around Limerick, bouncing a ball. Just walking, just bouncing the ball off the pavement, bang, like Rocky Balboa used to do back before he got famous. Like, just walking around, popping. And I was walking, and suddenly I was walking by Limerick prison one day, and I remembered the Cooler King, Steve McQueen in The Great Escape. He was, when he'd be captured, after being captured, he'd go into to the hole or to the solitary, and he'd be in there with his baseball cap and his baseball, or bouncing around after thing. And I thought, geez, wouldn't it be really cool for the lads inside in prison to have a bouncy ball, so if I can board out of their boxes, play around. I mean, how can you hurt somebody with a bouncy ball? Like, Jesus Christ. So I went into Limerick prison one day to talk to him about, I mean, like, that's the closest I've ever been to Limerick prison. Writing to the Limerick warden, saying, would he be interested in introducing bouncy balls, and doing something for the prisoners. I mean, I obviously, no, from what I said to you, like, anybody who's been to prison, I've said that to, they look at me like I'm gone nuts. I haven't the first clue. If you're going to prison, there's one guy said to me, If you go into prison, you don't pay any attention to anybody. You put your head fucking down, unless you're like King Kong size and people, you can punch through brick walls.
Yeah.
You put your head down. You don't flip and get friendly or unfriendly. You just do your own thing and do your sentence and get out. You don't go in there looking to get people to play with bouncy balls or go on hunger strike or
Well,
anything
that's
like.
a
I mean, like,
certain kind of person that goes in there that does that. But I was up in Cork prison for 5 days for not paying fines
oh my God,
for cannabis possession. Yeah, they locked me up for 5 days for it.
Jesus.
Yeah, but when I went in there, I was interested enough. Like nobody had their head down. Like everybody was head up, and there was a lot of socializing going on in there between the
Right.
criminals. Like somebody's, not the guys you want to be socializing with each other. To be fair, because they're just encouraging each other to do more nefarious things. Like they're gloating about their crimes. Like they're sharing information as to how to do stuff. Breaking into houses and all of this kind of carry on. Some of them would be even organizing attacks there. Like I was witness there to listening to one conversation where a guy was organizing an attack for when he got out of prison because he made friends with a guy who got put into prison because of somebody ratting on him. So that guy now was going to go out and he was going to attack his new friend's rat, the guy who ratted on him, so like this kind of stuff was going on in there. Like they were gambling in there, like they were gambling Swiss rolls. So they have commissary and they were able to get Swiss rolls, like chocolate cakes and things, and they were gambling those. So they'd have busters, and they might be gambling on horse racing, they could be gambling on soccer, like and then like there's no remorse there for them. Like and then the prison officers as well, like they kind of know what the crack is. Like there's a lot of blind eyes getting turned up there. It's a very
Understand.
interesting place to be, to be fair. But I was up there for not paying my fine for cannabis possession. That time I was just point blank refused, and I refused to show up to court actually as well. They sent out a bench warrant for me.
Oh well, you're asking for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but fuck him. Like, as the way I see it is, when I went into court, I had a conversation with the judge. I tried to like talk to him as a human, like as a person, and plead to that person inside of him. Like, but what I found out that day is basically these judges, they're fucking emotionless robots that they
Yeah,
only
yeah, I
see
mean, like, yeah.
they
I
see
mean,
things black and white. That's it. You broke the law or you didn't, and they don't care what the law is. Like if the law is like, oh, you're supposed to give your slave lashes every day, and you're a slave owner and you don't lash your slaves, like, oh yeah, no bother. Yeah, we're going to punish you for not doing that because it's the law. Like laws shouldn't define your morals. Like that's the way I see it. I hurt nobody. I'm doing nothing wrong in what I do, and I'm not sorry for it. And I kind of pretty much said that to the judge that day, and he didn't want to entertain it at all. He said, "This is a court of law. This isn't where we discuss the law. This is whether you broke the law or not.
that is
This is where we
judicial.
enforce the law."
Yeah,
Essentially, is what he said.
yeah.
And that then to me, it was the first day I got a conviction, and it was the day I stopped showing up to court after that. That was my form of protest, because I tried, as you say, you try everything. I tried to get onto the politicians, I tried to get onto the councillors, like fruitless efforts. Like none of them want to do anything. This is my life, is kind of what I'm saying to them. Like I'm being bullied by the state, by their policies. I'm hurting nobody. There's a lot more people being hurt by these policies, and none of them want to listen. Like they all have their heads buried in the bloody sand. It's heartbreaking. Like it really is. Like I'm 30. I've been in this criminal system since I'm 17. That was when I was first stopped and searched and caught with cannabis or with hash, when I was 17. I'm now 30. I'm 31 yesterday, and I'm going to be going to court now on Monday for a joint, like for one fucking joint. And I'd be pretty much up there saying the exact same thing to the judge. Judge, I am not sorry, and you're a big clown. I won't say that to him,
Yeah,
obviously. Like
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be very polite, I'll be very respectful, but at the same time, like I don't expect to get through to any. I don't think there is any like an ounce of, I don't know, fucking what would you say, like that inside of them, like there's no humanity in them. Like they have no compassion. That's the word. Not like there's not a bit of compassion there at all that I'm going to get from that judge on that day.
I think they'll try. They within the strictures of things that are available to them. I've seen judges be decent to people as well. I mean, there's some. Well,
The
the
judge can
judges.
do what he wants, essentially. The only thing he can't do is punish me outside of what the law allows him to punish me by. But the judge can show discretion in any case that they want to. At any time, a judge can say, I'm not going to prosecute you. Strike this case out. Good day. Have a nice day. Thanks for showing up.
I mean, I,
Anytime a judge can do that.
they're. I think judges though they are wedded to the notion of consistency, that if they've given somebody a sentence, even if it was 10 years ago, if that, I mean, unless the laws change in the last 10 years, they will feel it's their obligation, their duty to be consistent. So if they, just because you're a nice guy and you're obviously a decent bloke, they're not going to turn around and say, well, you're just because you're a nice guy and you're not harming anybody, it's still the law. I mean,
Oh, I know, but it's not even about me. It's about my two kids, my mom and dad, my partner. You know, there's all the other people who are going to be affected by them criminalizing me because of this one thing that I done that only affected me and nobody else. Nobody else. Like I have a daughter who's 13, I have a daughter who's 7, and they're going to be possibly be without their dad if I get sent to prison. You know, even for the last 2 or 3 months, they're pretty much kind of without their dad for a percent of the time because they're every single morning without fail I've woke up with anxiety in my gut. I've just had that feeling in my belly, and it takes away from the quality of life, the quality of person I can be for those people who I love most in my life.
Well, kids aren't stupid. They're going to notice that you're upset about something. They're going
Oh,
to,
exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, it's something that I'd never really actually thought about. To be honest with you, that the relatives of all these people that are like yourself, who are doing no harm to nobody. And
Yeah.
as I said, I don't have any close family relatives, so I'm not affecting anybody by going on hunger strike if I do. But for people that like yourself, like, I mean, it must be like living in fucking Twilight Zone or something like.
At times it is. You really do wonder, like, you scratch your head like that. How is a person okay with this? Like two kids fatherless. Like how many other people are out there like me, like who've been in this situation where they're getting punished and their kids are suffering, like their families are suffering. Like any kids who have to grow up for any period of time without fathers in their life, like that's impactful. That affects their mental health, like that affects their character and who they are. you know there's a lot of impacts there, like a lot of negative impacts from not having a good dad in your life. And for me, I love my kids. Like there's nobody, there's nothing I wouldn't do. There's no lengths I wouldn't go to be the best dad I can be for them.
Including having them grow up in a country where when they get to be 17, they're not 17 yet, I presume. You didn't start.
No, they're not. 13 is the oldest. But yeah, like that is a motivation
You
for
started
me.
young.
I did, yes. I was 17
Young
when
yourself.
my girlfriend got pregnant and my child was born.
So
She was born 3 months before my 18th birthday.
whoa. Oh
Yeah,
man, you're so
big
fucking
change.
lucky.
But again, at that time, I was dealing with a lot of shit. As you say, like, oh wow, like it is a big thing, like to be a dad at such a young age. But also then to have on top of that, like the pressure of a court case pending for a cannabis possession. Like it was just out of whack. It was really hard to deal with. And
If that didn't do your head in, I don't know what would. Like, Jesus Christ.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
and for me, I always say cannabis brought more benefits to my life than negatives. Even still today, like I'll say that because even with all of the shit I had to go through with cannabis, like, but it calmed me down an awful lot as a young person. It brought me away from drink. I was drinking a bit as a younger person, 16, 17, and cannabis, I preferred it. I just preferred the chilled, like to be able to think more. I didn't think a lot before. I just done stuff. Like I didn't think, like I didn't use that part of my brain for some reason. But when I consumed
alcoholism.
cannabis, I thought.
I mean, I actually one day sat down and wrote a song when I was on cannabis. Like, I'm not the most, I'm the most uncreative person you ever meet in your life. And I don't know what, I just got this buzz one night. Had just a small little bit of cannabis, not much, like, and I mean, I wouldn't say it's the greatest song I've ever written or anything
No,
like
but
that.
it's your
But I
song.
mean, the flow that came, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I'd be there sitting down, write a sentence, and I know roughly what I want to write for the next sentence, what it should be about. And then I'd figure out, no, without even thinking hardly, I'd have a sentence that would rhyme, and then the next sentence. And I couldn't believe. I said, I do something. I felt what there was a guy on, I think it was the Snow Patrol. He talked about inspiration. You hear artists and writers, musicians talking about inspiration, and I didn't know what they were talking about. As far as I was concerned, you're writing a song, you sit down, you figure out what you want to write about. I mean, totally logical, Captain. You know what I mean? That's how much I knew about right. I mean, I had no idea. I didn't know what inspiration was like. And it was the most, geez, it was a very strange feeling for a guy like myself who thinks logically about things. For something so creative to just pop out of me from nothing. I mean, if I was tripping on acid or something, I wouldn't be at all surprised if something like that happened. Oh, it never did, by the way.
Yeah.
But just,
It's
it happened to be.
just yourself to be open. I think it allows you to do that, like have a little bit of openness, a bit of flexibility there around
Yeah,
your thoughts, because I think without cannabis, like you're tending to be a bit more rigid in your way of thinking, whereas cannabis allows you to be a
logical,
bit more.
Captain. This is not logical.
Yeah,
I mean, that's.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's the way our brain, our thinking brain, actually works. You know, logically. You know, I mean, I'm hungry. Oh, I need to eat.
Mm.
I haven't had any exercise today. I must go for a walk. I haven't spoken to Joe Blogs in a week. I should give him a ring. But I mean, there's a whole rest of our brain that logical people like me rarely have access to. You know, this creative side that people, which is very enjoyable. You know, I mean, I have to admit, like, I mean, I was very proud of myself when I went out one day. There's one when I was busking. And I had a tiny little bit of hash left over from the night before. And I never smoke first thing in the morning, never. I did once in my entire life. And it was a Christmas morning. I decided to watch Gone with the Wind. And so, I mean, it's a once-off thing. I mean, by Christmas night then, I was like a fucking zombie. Like, I mean, I wasn't capable of enjoying the rest of the night. Like, so, I mean,
Yeah.
so like, but I actually, one day I decided I was going to bust it. I had a bit of a smoke, tiny bit of hash left over and went out. And I decided I played this song. It was the first song I'd ever learned when I was like, you know, The House of the Rising Sun. It's one of the first, I mean, it's the first song that isn't
Great
a
song.
three-part trick, you know, it's
Yeah.
simple thing. And I'm not joking. I actually experienced something that Joni Mitchell once described. She described as to, she got into a state of mind whereby the song was singing, she was using her to sing. That the song was that she didn't know where the song was coming from. She did. I mean, and I remember I was playing. I was actually no. I looked around. There was no one blooming even near me. So I just actually banged this out, The House of the Rising Sun, for myself. And Jesus, I was bang on the chord changes, perfect, spot on every time. And the singing was fantastic. I mean, I at a certain stage when I was singing, I was going like, is the song singing me or am I singing this song? You know, I mean, I hadn't heard about Joni Mitchell and her experience at that stage. It was only years later that
No, you were in that alpha flow state. Like it's a common
I don't know
occurrence
what it is.
people talk about, like where they
I don't
feel
know.
like that something just takes over them, like that you're almost like in an autopilot stage, like where you don't feel like you're in
Yeah,
control anymore.
yeah, well,
It's like,
yeah, but in a good way. I mean, you know, I
oh,
mean,
in a good way, like, but
yeah,
I experience things like that there now sometimes with Thai boxing. Let's say I do a lot of Thai boxing, and you could be sparring, and there's sometimes like you just get into a flow state in the sparring, like where you just see things coming, like, and you don't know how it is you're seeing this coming, like, but you just get into a flow state, and it's
it's,
just getting into that alpha state in the brain, and you
I
just
think
working through
sports
things.
people call it the zone, isn't it? You know,
The
they call
zone,
it like
yeah, it
basketball
is.
players. I've heard them talking about the zone. I mean, they feel like you just can't miss
Yeah,
no matter what you
but
do.
I think what
The
what
ball is
happens in
going.
that, like, is all of these other things that would be bothering you, like, you know, oh, the dishes have to be done, like the dog has to be walked, like all of that stuff goes away. All that matters is the present moment, right here, right now, as Ramdas would say, be here, be now. You know, like that is the flow state. Like it's the most present you can be. Like, and like you're so present, it feels like you're almost witnessing it, like it's happening like to you rather than you doing it, like, you know. It's a very interesting concept, like, but yeah, cannabis definitely opens people up to that. But I
Yeah.
suppose, but before we go off on too many more tangents there on
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
I just wanted to get back a bit more there to your current case and stuff like that. So it's the 27th of September, you said you're up again, is it?
22nd of September.
22nd, sorry.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I see you're looking for volunteers there. What's that about there
well,
on
that's
post?
from, as I said to you, that my plan A would be to be able to have my perfectly prepared defense, and I can't prove I'm not guilty, but I'll be able to. I'm planning to introduce Professor David Nutt's report as evidence,
Okay.
and in an effort to allow the judge to break with his consensus that he's had built up over years. And I was talking to Faulkner Rowe yesterday, and he pointed out to me that what I should do, and what the judge probably will accept, is saying that since the judge started out sentencing people, that there's new evidence, scientific evidence has come to light that he should be made aware of.
Mm-hmm.
That cannabis is not the dangerous drug that he was led to believe back in, so that the discretion built into the criminal justice system it should be enough for him to, he should be able to exercise his discretion and offer me or sentence me. He has to sentence me to something. I mean, I've been up in front of him before, and I've tried arguing the unjust law argument, and he just said to me, that's a matter it's not a matter for him, it's a matter for the TDs. Get onto my local TDs and get the law changed. It's not, he can't decide to ignore the law. So I tried that unjust law argument with him, and he just won't listen to it. I mean, he would literally tell me, I try bringing it up again, he'll just tell me to shut up. So I mean, there's no point getting into a shouting match with the judge. Like, so I'm hoping to introduce this the Professor David Nutt's report as my plan A, so that he can then see that he can then use it as an excuse to give me either a reduced sentence or whatever he comes up with.
Yeah.
That's plan B would be, if I can't get myself do that properly before the 22nd, would be to say to the judge, I don't have enough time, or I'm incapable of presenting a proper defense. And after 3 months, he actually said that to me in June when I was there, that to get onto this straight away and don't leave things go, like. And so I mean, he may not listen to that argument either, that if he doesn't like my argument, that if you won't allow me to introduce the evidence, and he further goes on to say that you've had ample time and it's now too late to get a court-appointed solicitor. If both of those things happen, then there's plan C, which if both of those things happen, I'm guaranteed a prison sentence based on what he gave me before.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I was in front of him, he sentenced me for 10 grams of cannabis, and that was it, 10 grams of cannabis, no plants found, nothing. And he sentenced me to 120 hours community service. And then the court stenographer, the guy who takes down what goes on, he piped up and said, Judge, you can't sentence somebody to community service. And he said, oh, sorry, I sentenced you to 3 months in prison and 120 hours in lieu of. He then had to correct himself, saying, I sentenced you to 3 months in prison and you're getting 120 hours community service in lieu of that 3 months in prison. So he's already, for 10 grams of cannabis, he's given me 3 months in prison. So if what he's going to do with 100 grams of cannabis and 6 plants, if he doesn't listen to the Professor David Nutt's report, and he won't allow me to give me more time to work with a solicitor, then I'm on to plan C, which is, as I said to you, if it gets as far as plan C, then it's going to be prison time for me here. And the only option I have at that stage then is, as I understand it, is to process this would be to go on hunger strike.
Okay.
No, I won't know until I'm in prison. I mean, I've heard people say that I could get into prison and be released because of COVID-19 or something. I could be inside there for a day. They say we're going to after 3 or 4 days I get released, or a week I get released. It could be something. So I won't know all of that until I'm actually in prison. So I'm going to need. I have actually, one guy gave me his postal address so far. And if I can get 1 or 2 more postal addresses, I'll write to those 1 or 2 or 3 people saying that I'm in Limerick prison and the hunger strike is on.
Mm-hmm.
And they will then be up to them then to contact other people who are a second group of volunteers who don't want to give me their postal address for whatever reason, and that's quite understandable. You know, I'm talking to people online, and there are people who want to keep their anonymity, and that's
Yeah.
totally okay. Like, so if it gets, so the two groups of people, one would be the postal addresses, and I have one, I need one or two more, and then anybody else that wants to help out then after that, who wants to, who will post and write to the media, who might
Yeah.
give Joe Duffy a ring and lifeline and say one of our buddies is up in flipping Limerick prison, and
Well,
you
I'd
know,
be
he's
more
in
than
there
happy
for,
enough to do that part there for you anyway. I'd be banging that
well,
drum hard for you.
well, if it does, I mean, if that's plan C now at this
Yeah,
stage,
if
like,
it comes to that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's last resort, last ditch. I mean, I'm not a flipping crazy man who's here going, I'm going to flipping, you can't do that to me, I'm not for hunger strike, you know, kind of trying to, I mean, I think it's wrong to go in and blackmail the court. I mean, I can't go into the court and say, Judge, if you sentence me to prison, I'm going on hunger strike.
Yeah.
You know, that's blackmailing the court, and that's, I mean, not only is it not going to work, it'll, you know, I mean, it's just wrong. It's just plain wrong to kind of you know, to do that. I mean, the court should be given the opportunity to do the right thing first
Yeah.
off. And as I said, I'll see after that. Then if plan A and plans A and B don't work, then I'll be depending on the what's his name? I have his name here. Jerry Nealon has kindly given me his postal address, so I'll write to him.
Brilliant.
And I'll ask him then to contact yourself. If the hunger strike is on, he'll contact you and anybody else that's interested and let you know what's happening. And if I'm only in for the 4 or 5 days then, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
well, only 4 or 5 days.
Only.
You wouldn't say only 4 or 5 days, would you? I mean, 5 days is 5 days too many. Like, but I mean, it's not enough to for a successful hunger strike. It's something that has to be done properly. You really should have a solicitor. You should have a full team behind you. I mean, Sinn Féin did you know, the hunger striker back in the 1980s, they had the whole country behind them and it didn't work, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
so
I was trying to start one when they locked me up for that 5 days. I was trying to start one myself inside of there. Basically, when I was brought from the holding cell before they put me into the main body of the prison, I was offered a load of drugs by a nurse. She essentially was offering me anything I wanted at all, to an extent, like antidepressants, like fucking antipsychotics, sleeping pills. I'd say I could have asked her for pretty much whatever I wanted there. That before I went in, and I asked her for cannabis, and she wouldn't give it to me. But I was. Yeah, I was trying anyway, exactly. But to be honest, I was very mentally unstable at this stage because of just my situation, my predicament. My freedom was taken away.
were you upset?
I was very upset, incredibly upset.
You were very upset. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, it wouldn't be. I mean, you know your own mind, obviously. But I mean, most people, if they were I mean, for a criminal, they know if they're going out robbing, raping, murdering, they know that this, you know, they accept that this is part of the job. I mean, that's their blood. That's how they make their money, through shoplifting, robbing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, guys like you and me being treated like a criminal is like, Jesus. I mean, it would drive you nuts. I mean, I'm not joking. I go down the road. I mean, just walk, because the guards have stopped me so many times. You know, they just drive by, take a look at me, and stop me and search me. I mean, every time a guard car passes by me, I'm totally tensed up. I mean, that stuff is bad for your mental health.
It is, yeah.
So
Talk
I
about
mean,
cannabis making you paranoid, but prohibition makes you far more paranoid.
well, that's the as I was saying to you earlier, that's the article I'm looking forward to getting back to now later on this evening. That there's an actual, people don't realize it, but that prohibition is enforced using force. It's by physical force.
And
Using
intimidation,
physical force on people has negative consequences. You know, I mean, you have to use physical force against people who are physically violent, because you've no choice. But I mean, people do have a choice as to whether cannabis should be legal or illegal. It's not like this written in stone that, you know, I mean, it's not like arsenic or something, you know, that it has to be. It's the amount of it has to be. You mean, you'd have to. I don't think it's possible to actually overdose on cannabis. Like, it's not, I mean, to get to the poison level, you know, I mean,
Well,
it's,
to quote the scientists, they said basically the only way they could kill the mouse, or the amount of cannabis it took to kill a mouse, was depending on how high you dropped it from. Because the only way they could kill the mouse was by dropping a big bag of cannabis on top of it from a height.
yeah.
So the amount was depending on how high you dropped it from.
Do you know something? I mean, when cannabis, I mean, eventually someday, provided we don't get some kind of 1930s fascist thing with all this. I mean, the climate change at the moment is bad. It's going to get 10 times worse, and the economic consequences are going to be ferociously bad. We're in 10, 20 years' time, we're going to be going through things that we'll be looking back to 2020, going, geez, weren't we so lucky that it was only 1 degree or half a degree above normal?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd like to say that someday people will realize the error of their ways, that cannabis being illegal is nuts, and it will be legalized.
Hopefully,
But I mean, we could easily get people look back at the 1930s and think, how could that happen? You know, that this fascist mindset, you know, that the state is always right. Like, I mean, I wrote to one politician one day, and this is going back years ago, like, and I was thinking of going on my first time it ever occurred to me to go on hunger strike, that this was an option to me. And this well-known politician wrote back to me saying that, well, listen, you have to obey the law. And I said to her, well, I said, I wrote back to her saying, this is fascist way of thinking, that the state is always right. You know, you can't just accept that the state is always right. And she didn't recognize at all what she was saying was basically that saying that I was right. You know, that taking the attitude is that you can't disobey the laws. And I was trying to tell her, listen, I was using the Martin Luther King unjust law argument, that it's a moral obligation to disobey an unjust law. But I mean, that's she was a barrister, like, so I mean, you're talking about people who, you know, who their respect for the law is paramount. You know, they won't consider breaking the law in any
yeah, but
circumstances.
I think they misrepresent or misinterpret what respect for the law is like, because when you have an unjust law, as we do, challenging that is like to the utmost respect of the law. Because, like, why would you tolerate a law if it's unjust? Like, isn't law all about justice? And if a law is unjust, then it flies in the face of what law is supposed to be about, which is justice and protecting
Well,
one another.
if obeying Martin Luther King, his reasoning goes back to Thomas Aquinas, isn't it? That we obey just laws because I mean, we don't drive at 100 miles an hour going down the main street of a town. We obey just laws because just laws make us safer and help society. And by obeying just laws, you're helping society. You're doing your best.
Yes,
But
sir.
if you obey unjust laws, you're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
You're making things worse. So that's the reason that why it's morally and logically correct to disobey unjust laws. I mean, you're supposed to disobey an unjust law, but I mean, as I said, I tried that argument with the judge, and not a chance, man, not a chance. You know, it's a case of go bring the local GDs.
The legalize cannabis Ireland party, as we're talking about the TDs and stuff. What happened with that? How did that come? That you started it 4 years ago, was it?
4 years ago, as I said, I just started the Facebook page, and it seems such a simple thing to do. All you need is 300 people to attend a national conference. At that conference, you elect your president, your treasurer, secretary, all the personnel, and you get your fees. That was the mistake they made back in the late 1990s. They tried starting a political party, but it was
Olaf Tillotson and someone
I
else.
forget. There's two main guys involved in it. I actually met one of the guys up in Dublin who's heavily involved, and he said he explained to me that the reason that they didn't they weren't able to form a new political party was because they weren't charging they weren't charging fees. So I mean, I set up the website IrelandsCannabisParty.com. I put down all these policies besides cannabis, which it's just my own opinion. You know, they're nothing. I mean, if at the conference, if it ever gets held, whatever policies that Ireland's Cannabis Party will be adopted because the members decide it's
Yeah.
adopted, not because John O Regan has written it down on his website. Like, there was a guy got on to me a few weeks ago saying that I should change the website to reflect. I mean, like, I have one of these legalized abortion is still up there. You know, I mean, for instance, when I is one of the policies. Like, I mean, because I didn't just want to have. I felt that if we put in our application and we're just a one policy party, that the registrar in Dáil Éireann would refuse the application because it was just one policy. Like, so that's why I put in all these extra policies. Like, so this is almost, I mean, as I said, it takes 300 people to get together in a room and to vote on things, and then you send off your application, and you can then, I mean, for instance, when I was doing it, if you're going at a general election and you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, who do I give my vote to? And you've some guy who's or girl woman who's there as a legalized cannabis candidate. There's no way to put that on the ballot box, and you can't put it on your posters either. You can't like have a spliff hanging out your mouth and a picture on the posters.
You can have a big weed leaf on your jumper, all right? Like, yeah.
I think you might get that as well banned. You mightn't be able to those posters too. I mean, there's regulations about the I think probably the most you could get up, like, you can have a Fianna Fáil pin on your jacket.
If you can wear a shamrock in a photo, you can wear a weed leaf. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you might be, but I mean, you can't put down the cannabis candidate, you know, so that...
No, you can't. But you can definitely create your own party, though, as what you were trying to do. Like, when I ran as an independent myself, I had only a choice to put nothing beside my name or put down non-party candidate. I wasn't allowed to put down independent. So I just opted for nothing beside my name when I ran. But have you actually ran in an election so yourself, John?
No.
Oh, you haven't?
To put yourself forward, you need to... I could have run as an independent or as a like you did as well. And I just felt that it was without being able to... Okay, I've got dreadlocks, and I could have tried to put the dreadlocks in focus front kind of thing, you know, just try to do it that way. But the impression that I had at the time was that I couldn't distinguish myself in any way other. The photograph had to be a simple photograph of the person.
Yeah, I think you're focusing too much on the ballot paper in that regards, maybe, because for to distinguish yourself, it's not on the ballot paper you do it. It's on the radio, it's on the newspaper, it's on the street in front of the people. I think that's how you that's how I distinguished myself anyway. And the fact then that I was very happy. I got 291 first preference votes. I topped the independents on the day, which was great for me, first timer. There were some independents up there a couple of times out.
I can guarantee you, if you had Cork's Cannabis Party or legalized Cannabis Party on the ballot paper, well, I mean, you would have people who, just like me at the election, when I went into the ballot box the last election, I looked around, is there any green candidate there? There is, okay, I'll give him a vote.
I know.
Is there anybody else who isn't Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael? I gave them a vote. I actually voted, even though I didn't mean to. I voted for Sinn Féin because number 3. I couldn't find the number 4, number 5. If there was, there's people like yourself, myself, who we saw, who don't watch Prime Time and Tonight Show, and who don't listen to all these politics programs, and the first time they recognize that there's somebody on the ballot paper who's a pro-cannabis candidate is when they're in the blooming ballot box. They'll see this
the name on the box. Yeah, okay, no, you're dead right. There is a percentage of people there in that regard. But I think you're bringing up some very valid points there, though. There are issues to be worked on. Like if the people don't listen to Prime Time or whatever, like we're not like the Leo Varadkars, the Simon Harrises. Like we're different to them in that, like, we know people, like we know real people that actually go out and deal with real life, unlike the Simon Harrises, who deal with people who live some alternate kind of reality to the normal people. Like, you know, they're above us. Like, so we have a way in which we can reach these people, but I think we just have to put in the effort. Like, obviously, I know myself running as an independent, I wasn't given the fair airtime as other candidates were when it came to radio stations and newspapers. But it's something you have to fight for.
I mean, my idea was, I mean, I don't think it's I don't think cannabis is such an over, for the vast majority of people, is going to click with them. It's going,
No.
but what could click with people is they won't give you the number. They wouldn't give me what I was thinking. They wouldn't give me their number one vote. Probably not even the number two. But if I got the number three or number four vote, just give me one. Yeah, I mean, I'd be going around. The idea would have been I'd be going around to houses and advertising. Give me your number three vote. Give me your any vote. Just give me one of your preferences.
Yeah.
And just the reason being, okay, I'd love to be on a TD salary for 4 years. I wouldn't mind having that kind of cash after being on the dole most of my life. But it would show the politicians, holy shit, this character John O Regan, and in the Clare constituency got 12,000 fourth preference votes. Like, I mean, there's people out there actually do support this thing. Crap,
Yeah.
we better adopt it as a policy.
But don't sell yourself short, man. Push for those first preferences. Like, make sure you push for it, because you'd be very surprised. You'd be very surprised though. Like what I found with people is when you got talking to them, their issues were there was a crossover there. Where there's, like, let's say the hospitals were a big one, and homelessness. Well, if we were to legalize and regulate cannabis, and we could ring fence the taxes that are generated for our hospitals and for the building of public houses, like I reckon that, like, just having conversations around that and about how our Gardaí can be more efficient in keeping our streets safer, like I got to learn a lot about people, and they got to learn a lot about how prohibition was affecting their lives on a day-to-day basis, where they didn't even realize it was.
Well, you'd wonder, like, how anybody your age, but or probably a bit older even, who has a 13-year-old son or daughter, and they're saying to themselves, well, in the next year or two, if not already, they're going to come across cannabis. And at the moment, who's telling them about cannabis at the moment? I mean, it's what they hear off their friends, or that's what they believe. Like,
Oh,
so I mean,
my daughter shows me her
what
Instagram, and the young fellas that are on it already, and the young fellas they're dealing, like, she shows me like 12 and 13-year-old friends that are rolling joints and selling cannabis, like giving out in tick and all sorts of stuff. Like, it's crazy, like these devices that the kids have, like today, like the power they have in their pocket and the things they can do. It's scary to think of.
Well, I mean, they're whatever harms or dangers that they're facing from cannabis isn't helped by making it illegal. It's just, it only makes things worse. Like, so I mean, I feel like telling them, like, look at the statistics from. I think there's actually only been one report that I've seen which showed, which was a meta-analysis, so thousands of high school students in the United States, did show a slight increase at post-legalization. But if you actually followed on from that and kept reading it, which I did, there's also a correlation between legalization in one state and an increase in another. Do you know what I mean? They figured out that because people are, or the spin they put on that, or the reason they gave, was that because it's been legalized in these other states, that children or underage people in states where it's still illegal, they're getting the impression, well, it's not that big of a deal. Look, it's legal over in, so that there are some increases as well in people, youngsters that are scared at the moment.
Yeah, and it sounds like the increases are in states where age limits aren't applied, where the store isn't regulated.
Well, I mean, I mean, for people out there, if there was anybody out there who's against cannabis and doesn't want it, I'd say to them that their fears, there's one of their fears are true, in that if cannabis was legalized in Ireland, you would have an increase, and you'd guaranteed have 100% guaranteed a big increase in people going to hospital. And why? Because for the first time they realize, oh shit, I'm in trouble, I need help, and they will, because of a medical condition, I'll go to see my doctor, or I'll go to the ER room. Whereas at the moment, if you were freaked out on cannabis, completely gone twisted crazy, or something in your own brain, there's people like that who are susceptible to having. At the moment, they'd be paranoid about going to a doctor or going to the ER room. I mean, they'd have to be. I mean, they're going to lay themselves open for all kinds of legal complications that'll go on for the rest of their lives. Like, so, well, I mean,
this is the one thing I bring up when it comes to, like, I set up Students of Sensible Drug Policy when I was in CIT, But that's a big issue with students and drug use, is that if a student has an overdose while out partying with friends, there's a high likelihood that the friends could maybe do nothing about it and just leave
Yeah, yeah.
because they don't want to be implicated in it. Like maybe one of the friends was the one who got the drugs, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's a lot of implications there with that, and people end up in a lot more danger. Time is
Yeah.
everything when it comes to overdoses. Like if you abandon a person and leave them there having an overdose, like as opposed to ringing an ambulance or the medics, like that's the difference of saving a person's life or not. And sadly, a lot of the times people choose not to because of fear of being punished or being again implicated in it, fear of losing a
Well,
job and all of this stuff.
well, most of them. I mean, if there was 4 or 5 friends and one of them gets into trouble, then then I mean, what's the natural reaction going to say? Well, bit of fresh air, leave him alone for 10 minutes to see if he comes out of it. I mean, the first reaction is not going to be, shit, we better get the fucking ambulance and the guards
Ambulance,
down here
yeah.
straight away, give them our names and address. I mean, it's, it's crazy,
Yeah.
I mean, that
But
people who say they are concerned for welfare of children and still believe that cannabis being illegal, or any drug for
yeah.
that matter. I mean, I'm not just a believer that cannabis should be legalized I mean, anything that people have been doing for the last 30 years without, I mean, yeah, okay, there might be, we may eventually come across a drug someday that is like you try it once and you're immediately addicted, and I mean, a drug might be invented, something like super
There,
heroin, like crack was supposed
there's
to be one day. I mean, remember the crack scare back in the 1990s? Like, I mean,
yeah.
I was in New York in 1988. One of the girls in the flat that I was staying in said, "Well, John, if I ever hear about you doing crack," I mean, to say her boyfriend was a fucking coke fiend. Like, I mean, he snorted coke,
Mm-hmm.
and that was fine. I mean, I remember spending one Sunday afternoon in Queens, crashed out, dying from a hangover from the night before, crashed out on the couch, and the whole night I was listening to this. Listen, the sound, I didn't know what it was until afterwards. The sound of a credit card on a mirror, bang, 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 going on all afternoon. Like, I mean, geez, it was driving me nuts. Like, but like, I mean, at one stage, even the president of the United States, known as a person, like saying that this thing crack is like, they introduced penalties that it was like 10 to 100 times worse than powder cocaine, and there's no scientific validity to that at all. I
No,
mean,
the
there's
only
no.
the only evidence that supported that was there was more black people using it because it was a cheaper form of cocaine, and it was just
Mhm.
another form of them using this war on drugs to implement more racist policies, like that. That's why marijuana is the term for cannabis, is because there's a bunch of racists over in America back in the 1930s when they brought in this prohibition on
Harry J.
cannabis.
Anslinger, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the racist fat
They're
aristocrat.
actually
Yeah.
I saw a proposal in legislation this morning. They're proposing to ban the use of the word marijuana with a. There's 2 ways of spelling it: MARAHUA or
Yeah.
MARIJUA. Both of those words are now supposed to be, because they were only used as racist. Because they were the words used by the Mexican community in California. And so it was a and plus also, once marijuana was banned, there were thousands of doctors who didn't even know what marijuana was, and
Hmm.
who were prescribing cannabis to their patients, and they didn't object to this new law because they didn't realize it was going to affect them. Like,
Yeah,
but
exactly. But also at the same time around then, aspirin and some other painkillers were becoming more readily available too. So now not only did the doctors not have to prescribe cannabis pain medications, they had all these alternatives, the pharmaceutical based ones. So it was much easier then for that transition to happen, because one of the most widely used one of the most widely reasons for cannabis being used was pain management. And then you had these opiate based drugs now coming on the market, and the aspirin and stuff like that, or other pain medications, so it was easier for them to do that. So there was more money in it again for these other medications too, because they're pharmaceutical
yeah,
based, like they're petrochemical based chemicals, like essentially. So there was more money there as opposed to your natural pharmacy, natural cannabis medicine.
I mean, I've actually considered going, when I speak to the judge in a couple of weeks' time, of explaining to him that his entire basis for cannabis to be illegal is based on nonsense. Like, but as I said, having spoken to Faulkner yesterday, he's been in court himself plenty of times. I'm likely to get a bit. If I start to say to him, Judge, everything you believe is wrong. All those people you convicted were convicted wrongly. You're after destroying. I can't tell the judge that you're after destroying the lives of hundreds of people over your tenure as judge in County Clare. But if I say to him,
best interest.
well, I mean, if I put it to him in the way that he can accept, like saying that since he was last instructed, whatever, I'll have to come up with a proper formulation of words, which I haven't figured out. If I can say to him, listen, there's new evidence now, Judge, which you may not be aware of, and I'd like to introduce to the court as evidence, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. As you can see, that cannabis is actually less dangerous than alcohol, and if I try telling him like that he's part of a worldwide conspiracy by there isn't a conspiracy in the sense of people set down how we all know that cannabis is fine, but we're going to make it illegal anyway just to make money out of it. Ha ha. I mean, that didn't happen. Those people co-opted into it. Like, I mean, I think the major turning point was like once they got the UN to have their to get involved. That I mean, it meant individual countries were didn't have the option to legalize themselves. Like, I mean, I don't know why Uruguay hasn't been sanctioned by the UN. It should have been, and Canada as well. I mean, if UN rules are such that they should have been sanctioned. Like, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, the law. If you go into it, the law. If you go into the reasons why cannabis are legal, it's just nonsense. Like, I mean, it's patent nonsense.
It's based on morals more than evidence than anything. Like, it's all about morals, and that's it. Like, and that was alcohol prohibition as well. It was all about morals. There was no evidence at all to suggest that prohibition of a substance is beneficial to our society at all. It was more on morals. It was more, you shouldn't do it. I feel like you shouldn't do it. So I'm in power now. I can make a law, and I'm going to tell you not to do it. And I don't need evidence to back up whether it's good or bad. Like, that's essentially what our laws is. And I think there was a very good quote. I don't know who coined this, but basically it was a prohibition of mutually beneficial exchanges is doomed to fail. And that's what we've essentially done here. It's a mutually beneficial exchange. If you buy cannabis from a cannabis dealer, seller, whatever you want to call them, you give them money, they give you cannabis. You benefit, they benefit, nobody gets hurt. Like, for a society to try to ban that sort of activity, it's just not going to work. It's going to be a very, very burdensome job for that society to deal with that kind of behavior and to stop it. I
think that the legislators really thought it was just a minority thing. It was just we can ban this and look good and being hard and tough on crime and stuff like that. Like, but
I think you go back to when it was put in. Like, look how much influence the church had in Ireland back when these laws came in. Like, back in the 1960s. Like, we still were very much influenced by the church, and the church, when it comes to drugs, like, it's no, you don't alter your mind. No, it's sacrosanct. Like, you know what I mean? They allow alcohol and you can drink the blood of Christ, like, but geez, God forbid you eat some psychedelic mushrooms and possibly commune with what people perceive to be an alternate dimension and alternate gods and all this stuff, like, you know, God forbid you do that. Like, so it was, by and large, like, it was the church and a lot of morals that brought these laws into Ireland, and all obviously the UN and the US's influence there within the UN. Because all of this stuff started in the US back in the 1930s, but it poured over here into Ireland. Like, but again, the state and the church, like, they were married for a long time.
I actually wrote to the very first time when I started 4 years ago, I wrote to Enda Kenny when he was being Taoiseach at the time, and asked I can't remember exactly what was the scientific basis for his argument. I was trying to start a conversation about the legalization of cannabis. And the reply I got back was that they couldn't possibly do anything like that because of our UN obligations.
Yeah,
This,
which
no,
is
this is
bullshit.
before Canada and Uruguay and all that. Like, so I mean, I couldn't go back to them and say, well, what about Uruguay and Canada? Like, so.
Yeah, it's just
But
typical
that excuse,
politicians doing politician things, is passing the buck. Oh,
yeah,
I'd love
fobbing
to
off like.
help you, but I can't help you because it's this guy's problem. But I
I,
vote for
as I
me.
said, well, as I said to you earlier, I think they've got. It's just too. I think they it's too much work for them. I mean,
Yeah,
I said to myself one day, why don't I write out a 200-page document volume, Ireland's Cannabis Regulatory Authority, and
yeah,
put every last thing into it, like the chairman of the board, the paneling committees, and uh, every last thing. I mean, Jesus, I'm not joking. If you sat down and worked out everything that you need to do to properly regulate cannabis, it's like a couple of years man work. You know, I mean, you'd need about 10, 20 people full time working on scientific people as well as administrative and legal and medical and all the rest of that to do so. And it would be a major undertaking. And if you have a choice between spending your time trying to get cannabis properly regulated or getting your local health center, getting a nurse to your local health center, or getting potholes filled in, which is the one going to get you re-elected? And
but this is
people might be.
what I'm saying earlier. Like, it's these people. Like, there's a certain kind of person that takes to be a politician, and if we're going to sit back and write letters to these guys and hope that they might do something, like, geez, we're going to be sorely mistaken. Like, when the cops come and knock on your door to lock you up, you know.
I mean, that time I wrote to the Limerick prison. Within a day or two, I was walking into town again into Limerick, from Manicotti into Limerick, and this guy come out of nowhere, just come out, stood next to me, like, and I could tell he was checking me out. I don't know. I mean, he wasn't gay. I could tell that. I mean, he wasn't trying to get off me or anything, like,
Yeah,
and but he was very curious, and he was, I mean, so I mean, it's. But again, this is the old people can say, "Oh, you're paranoid, John. You're smoking too much." I mean, but like, you can draw unnecessary. I mean, I reckon that one of the big reasons why why I couldn't get 300 people to turn up in one location in 4 years. The vast majority of people are able to smoke cannabis without ever coming into contact with the law, and they
there
want
you
to keep it
go.
that way. And I understand that. I wouldn't swap my position, or I wouldn't put anybody in the position I'm in for all the fucking cannabis in the world. Like, I mean, there's like, have the law on your back, because once you got one conviction, then it's only a matter, you're an easy score after that. They see you coming down the road.
Well,
No, so that's the guy.
it doesn't take a conviction for that to happen, though. It just takes them to catch up with something, and then you're on the pull system. And
Mm,
once you're in there, then sure, you're known to any guard. If you give them your name and they run you through it, you're going to pop up, you know. And also that guard who caught you with stuff, like, he's always going to be looking for you now. So that's my experience anyway. Like, when I was stopped and searched
well,
that
yeah,
first
I mean,
time, it was the same guard who stopped and searched me at least 3 or 4 times after that. And the other 3 or 4 times he found nothing, but he was with other guards then those other
mm,
times, and those other guards then took it upon themselves to show interest in me and in me in the future. So other guards then knew about who I was and what I looked like back then, just because they were with this other guard who had searched and caught me with
yeah.
stuff the first time. So that's the shit that goes on out there. And sadly, like, yeah, as you said, there's a lot of people out there who have not got caught and who have not experienced this, and they're not willing to get involved, to make themselves known as consumers of cannabis and to partake in the fight for legalization. But like,
For them just to turn up at a demo, I mean, they don't know if the photograph is going to be taken, and all of a sudden they'll get in they're walking down the road someday, and somebody
I
stop,
know
or they,
they lose
and
their
they're, I
job,
mean,
possibly. Like, their
yeah,
boss could turn around and say, "Oh, you were at that cannabis mark. Oh, you use cannabis. Oh, yeah." And then they come in Monday morning and they're drug tested.
mm.
You know, like, this
I
stuff
mean,
does happen. It definitely does happen. I know a buddy of mine who shared a post, and he's working for Eli Lilly, I think it is, like a big pharmaceutical company anyway, or is it Johnson and Johnson? I don't know, one of them anyway. but he got pulled into the office, and the HR manager was like, oh, I seen you were sharing this stuff there up in your Facebook post about cannabis, and they were questioning him about it. It's just kind of like, fucking hell, that's crazy. Like, that was the first time I ever heard of somebody actually experiencing something like that for something they shared on their own Facebook profile. They got questioned on it in work. So that stuff is out there.
I mean, well, people like that buddy of yours obviously is never going to share the cannabis post again.
Oh yeah, he won't even like stuff.
Plus, everybody that he knows, that knows that story and knows him is going to go, fuck, you know, I better not get involved in this cannabis thing at all, or else. Like, I mean, I was walking down with my cannabis hat on, walking around collecting litter around Kilkee one day, and thinking I'm doing this great thing, making cannabis more a normal kind of activity, not something that's hidden away where there's these guys are back at having their spliffs, like. And next thing I know, the guards come along, bang, bang. They actually wanted to bring back, to give me back one of the phones they'd taken off me. I mean, apparently there's a guy I know down in Killarney, and I said this to him about the guards taking phones, and he almost split himself laughing. He said he couldn't count the number of phones that the guards have taken off him, like, you know, that. So like, so I mean, all the people come along, all the people the public see is me there with my cannabis hat picking up, and you know, there's what rubbish and goes out the window. All they do is see the guards, like, you know, and so everything I'm trying to do, they can just like that. All of a sudden you can go from creating this nice vibe, peaceful atmosphere, nothing to be afraid of at all. And oh shit, that's what happens to you when you like cannabis. The guards flipping, you know, and I mean, people. I mean, which is what I mean. I think is one of the major planks that why it's so hard to get it legalized is that once you've made people afraid of something, it's almost impossible for them to point out to them that their fears are groundless. I mean, if somebody's afraid of something that they're, you know, if somebody's afraid of dogs, you can't say to them, listen, 99% of dogs aren't going to give you any problem. You know, I mean, it's only the 1 in 100. You know, so that doesn't work.
I had myself and my family removed from my car on one Sunday morning, Easter Sunday. We were on the way up to Waterford to a dog show, bringing the dogs up with us. And the guards, I pulled up to a checkpoint, and the guards made me get out of the car along with my entire family at the side of a big main road, like a dual carriageway, main road. And they searched the entire car. They searched me and my family on the side of the road. And to this day, my youngest daughter, 7, she spots the guards all the time now. Like it's like an instinct in her. Like she sees the guards and she'll say it, like, "Oh, the guards are there. Guards are there, you better hide, Dad." Like, she knows now, like, you know, that there's this negative connotation there to the guards, like and she's only 7. Like my 13-year-old, like she also was in the car before and was stopped when I was stopped and searched by the guards, and she was roaring, crying in the back seat of the car. She was only about 4, I'd say, at the time. And the guards were going through my car, searching me at the side of a road one evening after I had just finished Thai boxing, and I was just after collecting my daughter. And I was a bit smelly, I was a bit sweaty in the car, and the guards said that they could smell cannabis coming from the car. So they searched it with my daughter in there, and she was traumatized by it. Like. So my 2 daughters now to this day, like, have been traumatized by the Gardaí in their efforts, like this fucking war on drugs, this prohibition of cannabis. They've now traumatized my 2 kids. It's like I did do anything like as such. Like, what the hell did I do that warranted that? Like, I had cannabis in my possession. Like, but that to me, like, I did no wrong.
If they found you before, if you had a conviction for having a couple of kilos, if they had you had a couple of convictions for dealing, you might say, well, the way, I mean, I don't know how guards do how they conduct themselves, I don't know how somebody investigates. And I mean, from what I can tell, the way the guards do investigation is they walk along to people and say, "Do you have cannabis?" Like, there was a guy in here one night. He was obviously his first ever time in charge of a raid, and they came along here and found 10 grams of cannabis. Like, that's all they found, and they were freaking out. They were going, "Where?" Your man comes into me and he goes, "Where's the cannabis?" I mean, he's like this guy. He's about 23, 24 years of age, talking to me like I'm some flipping, like he's you come along to your son, like, you know, I mean, some child,
Yeah.
like talking. I mean, geez, I mean, for your daughters, like, I mean, for anyone that listen out there, I mean, the father, you're the most important man in that child's life, bar nobody. I mean, maybe her husband later on in life might be the next most important person, but the most important for their development in their entire lives is their father. And to subject somebody to watching their father being made powerless and being completely at the mercy of these fucking guys in their blue uniforms, like, Jesus, you're going to go, I don't know who these guys are, but they're fucking not on my side. They're not, you know, I mean, you're right. I mean, I mean, children are resilient too, and they learn to, you know, as they grow up, they kind of forget things, like, but I mean,
Yeah. But
always in the
my
back of their
kids
mind.
look up to me, like they see me as their dad. Like I'm always there for them, like through thick and thin. Like always trying to do the right thing for them. Like I punish them when they do wrong and stuff. Like, and like when you talk to your children about the Gardaí, what do the Gardaí do? Oh, they catch the bad guys. Isn't like that's what I brought my kids up to believe. Like especially my older daughter. Like, yeah, prison is for bad people, and the Gardaí get the bad guys. But then how do I explain it to my daughter then, like that? Oh well, sometimes I'm the bad guy. Like even though
It
I'm
makes
not
no
a
sense.
bad guy,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
mean,
a bad guy.
how in a young person's mind, how do they reconcile those things? It's well, as I said, children are very resilient, but they're, you know, I mean, they're to expect children, you know, to put up with that like it's just a normal part of
Yeah.
your policing. You traumatize your suspects' children is the job. Like, there's got to be some. You'd wonder how it wouldn't occur to them that they shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. Although there are some of them out there who think this, you know, that the hard, you know, the hard man kind of thing, you know, that they're the hard man approach, that they're making life difficult for you, and it's, you know, I mean, it's the old 1950s tough love kind of thing. I don't know what, I mean, I've never, somebody who loves me toughly, they can fuck that off. They want to love me toughly. I don't know how that works. Like, I mean, even when you give your kids a smack or something, even though that's not tough love. That's punishment. That's part of loving somebody. It's not tough. Nothing tough about it. If you find it tough, fucking, if you can't discipline your children, you shouldn't be having children. Like, you know, or you should be going for a course to learn how to properly discipline your children. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, this whole attitude of, like, you know, being tough on crime and tough on drugs, and it's I don't. It's anti-evolutionary. It's like going back to, you know, I mean, that we came from the law of the jungle where the might is right, and it worked back then when, you know, but we're in a civilized society. We have a way, if we disagree with the way people conduct themselves, there should be civilized ways of dealing with them,
Yeah.
and it don't involve coercion and traumatizing children. And I'm sorry, I know you said that's all I can think about when I just
No,
picture in the
it's
back of my mind that you driving your car and an innocent, perfectly innocent child in the back seat going, "What the fuck?"
yeah, yeah.
It's,
No, it happens. Yeah, it
I mean,
happens, and I didn't really realize it for my 7-year-old that it was there like at that until it was the day actually I got my summons for the most recent court case. Um, so my mum rang me that day, and I was out on my bike cycling around with my youngest daughter. We were in around the city, and it really fucked up my day. But towards the end of the day, I went and I got some chipper, and we were sitting down by the Flying Enterprise there, down by the river, and my daughter hid down behind the seat we were sitting on, and she goes, "Quick, Dad, hide, the guards are there." And she started laughing like she was joking. No, like it was, she thought she was being funny. I was rather shocked by it, like that. Like, here I have my 7-year-old daughter who now thinks it's funny to hide from the Gardaí.
it's a
Um,
game, like, you know, yeah. That's
you
that's
know,
the way children have to.
I,
That's the
I
way children deal with difficult things. They make a game out of it, like, you know.
yeah, that's it. Like I couldn't help but to think, was it as a result of that, like her being taken out of the car, at this made stand at the side of the road and watch me getting searched, like is that why she wanted to hide from the guards as a joke that day? Like I can't help but think that. Like, I was horrified by it, to be honest. Like it broke my heart. Like when I seen it, like I had to just cover up with a smile and stuff, like and laugh along with her. Like, but geez, like I was just thinking, like, oh, that's horrible to kind of see. Like my daughter should be looking up to guards. Like Gardaí
Yeah, yeah.
should be respected in our communities, and not people we should be hiding from. So
And there's the last people we go. I mean, what you have I mean, why would you have people whose job it is to use physical force involved in the regulation of drugs?
yeah, it's
I
silly.
mean, it's. I mean, some of them. I mean, there are some of them are very decent people, very well meaning, and go through the motions. Know they have to read you this thing, and they have to search, and they're not apologetic about it or anything, but like they're decent enough about it.
Yeah,
They don't try to act the bollocks or anything like. And then there's you get those crowd out there who think they're heroes.
yeah.
They're protecting the whole country. They're
The John
solving
Rambos.
crime,
Yeah, that's
fighting.
what I like to
They're
think of them as.
well, I mean, I mean, I hate to have to rob them of that fucking, but I mean, a policeman's job should be in a civilized society. It should be the most boring job in the world because you have nothing to do. I mean, in a civilized
In a
country,
civilized society.
they're I mean, like 80% apparently or well over 50% of the people in prisons have mental problems or drug problems, and
Yeah,
would not be in prison if it were not for their mental or drug problem.
yeah,
So, like, I mean, our society needs. I mean, there's a book by Michel Foucault, Discipline and Punish. If you ever read the book, you start to think. You see, when I see a prison these days, I don't see like a large house. I see a dungeon. I mean, it's a medieval oubliette. It's the same. What's the difference between I mean, all you're doing. I mean, guards will tell you what they're doing is they're just taking people out of circulation. They're not actually trying to solve crime or prevent crimes or reduce crime. They're just taking people out of circulation for a period of time, as much
yeah.
as the judge will give them. Like so.
Because there's no rehabilitation goes on up there, at least very little of it anyway. A
Oh,
lot
I'd
of the
wonder what.
rehabilitation goes on outside of the prison afterwards.
Well, I don't know how many people go into prison and thought, well, that's it. I'm cured now. My criminal behavior. I'm going to come out and be a good boy or girl and do what I'm told and never again.
Very little. The
I
only
suppose.
time that happens is when a person is actually compassionate to that person and actually cares for that person and truly cares for them. Like it's not a case of, oh well, you got caught with heroin, I'm going to send you to prison because I care for you. No, you've an addiction to heroin. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to talk to you. I'm not going to judge you because you use a substance. I'm going to talk to you, try to maybe get to the root of why you're using the substance and work backwards from there then to get you off of that substance if that's the best thing for you. John, I think we're just going over the 2 hours, or possibly
We're
gone
talking about
over the 2
2 hours.
hours.
I mean,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ,
I
we're going
know.
to do a major edit in this. There's no way you can conclude all of this. Jeez,
Time flies when
you'll
you're
give
having fun.
subscribers. That's sorry.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's when you if you get started talking about this, it's there is so much out there. As soon as you say one thing, you think about
Yeah,
something else and
yeah,
mention something else. And I mean, you could. I mean, I only have about 10 or 15 books, and I've only read about another 10 more that online, that I have on EPUB that I read on the computer. I mean, the stacks of information out there is just mind-boggling. But I mean, the only thing that I'd say in the end, if you want to include this, is that if drugs were as dangerous as they were made out to be, how come Portugal isn't gone bananas? How come there aren't bonfires at the crossroads where virgins are roasted, and banks being robbed, and all these poor, lonely, or not, poor old people being robbed left, right, and
yeah.
centre? I mean, if drugs were as dangerous as people as the laws on them would suggest, then Portugal should have gone crazy in handbasket territory. Like, but I mean, yes, that's no topic for another day, is it?
No, you made some very good
Yeah,
point
well,
there on that. Like, yeah, Portugal decriminalized all drugs back in 2002, and their society is still standing strong, and has actually done a lot better for that move of decriminalization back then, as opposed to as if they didn't do it. Because back in 2002, pre-2002, they had a massive problem over there with rising HIV and hepatitis cases because of injecting drug use. But when they actually decriminalized the drugs and started to get to know who the users were, because the stigma was being broken down and people were coming in and partaking in the services, then they were able to reduce the harm on the drug users and reduce the overall effect on society. So I think if you're a registered heroin addict in Portugal, you can get a job where your employer will get up to 50% of your wage reimbursed by the government. So there's a subsidy there for an incentive basically to hire people who have addiction problems in order to give them a role to play within a community, whether it be working at the bloody drive-through or whether it be working in a mechanics or anything in between, you know. Like the person gets their role back in society, which is a step in
A life on track.
yeah, exactly. But it's a step in the process. It's one step of the process of recovery, essentially. Because again, like addiction, it's a very complex thing. But one common theme with addiction is the lack of connection. And someone like Gabor Mate brings that up like very well all the time. Basically, a person who gets addicted to this stuff a lot of the times is a person who is not connected to their community, whether it be their friends, family, or jobs. You know, they don't have a role to play in their community. So heroin offers an alternative there for them. It gives them bliss, euphoria, and escapism from this lack of connection within their community. So yeah, I think that's a good point to end on there. Basically, yeah, Portugal hasn't fallen apart, and Ireland needs to take a step now in this direction, and not only decriminalize drugs, but start coming up with means of regulating their supply there to get to the people who use them. So, John, thanks very much for your time, John. Hopefully, maybe we can follow back up there after your court case in September, where hopefully you don't go to jail. Hopefully we can speak on yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully that has a nice positive ending there to it. But definitely keep me in the loop.
There's a plan A, B, and C.
Good. And
C is the worst case scenario, and I mean, as I was saying to you offline earlier, I recognize that hunger strike is a desperate measure. It's only as a last resort, and even then, and I understand why cannabis smokers who are 99% peace-loving, life-enhancing people who want the best for everybody around them would find hunger strike. It goes against the grain totally. Like, so, I mean, I'm not expecting. I'm not expecting people to support me. I'm not making any demands on anybody at all. But if there's people, there are people like myself out there who come to the end of their tether, and who think that it's worth that. And if they want to get involved at all, get onto the Facebook page. There's an event they can sign up for, or at Ireland's Cannabis Party. Any way they want to contact me, I'll put them all. What I'll do is I'll put them all in contact with one another, so that they'll be able, or I'll put one or two people, sort of, as I said to you, I have one group who I'll write to, and then they'll organise it then through anybody else who wants to get involved.
So it's
that's the plan.
John O Regan on Facebook and the Legalised Cannabis Ireland Party on Facebook. They're the two pages where people will be able to find
Ireland's Cannabis Party. No, Ireland's Cannabis Party.
Ireland's Cannabis Party. So they're the two pages that people will be able to find you through. So
no problemo.
Brilliant. John, thanks very much again. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit and chat with you here this evening, and I look forward to hearing some good news to come from yourself into the future. So fingers crossed here, and you've 100% got my support.
Okay, Mark. Thanks a million, man. Cheers.
No problem at all, John. Enjoy the rest of your evening again, and thanks again.
Will do.